Welcome to Poker Fraud Alert Radio. This is a special episode broadcast on June 27th, 2025, the time 4:17 a.m. Of course, there's been a lot of things that have happened since our last episode. The World Series of Poker has been in full swing. There's been some stories I want to talk about that have nothing to do with the World Series of Poker, but we are going to cover one and only one story in this special episode, and we'll get to the other stuff on another day. That is the big story going on this week, and that is about the Millionaire maker and the chip dump that led to a bracelet being dumped off to someone other than who should have been the rightful winner. So that is a big story. We've never seen this before at the World Series of Poker. Maybe it's happened, but we haven't seen it happen until now. We actually have very, very strong evidence that this happened, and the whole poker world is talking about this. This is a very, very big subject. This is the biggest subject right now. So what we're going to do here is have a discussion about the whole thing from start to finish. So I'm going to play the video, but of course, since this is an audio show, you're not going to see much. But what I'm going to do is describe what I'm seeing and then tell you how blatant this was. And of course, by this point, you probably know that, yes, chip dumping very obviously occurred. So it's not that I'm trying to convince you, because I'm pretty sure if you're listening to this, you've heard about it and you see that everybody agrees that this was a chip dumped bracelet. But still, I want to show you guys how blatant it was, because that really feeds into the entire analysis of the situation. Because there's a lot of takes about this on Twitter, and in my opinion, most of them are wrong. Not about whether there was chip dumping, we all agree there was, but about whether this matters and why this matters and what the World Series should do about it and what ClubWPTGold should do about it, which I'll explain their part if you haven't heard about it yet. I think a lot of these takes I'm reading on X are very, very stupid. They're very, very uninformed. And that there's a number of intelligent people, very intelligent people, on X posting their opinions on this, which they're just firing off without thinking about this too deeply. And it's easy to have an opinion quickly without thinking about this that ends up being very wrong, because this is something that requires thought and it requires analysis to come to what I believe is the right conclusion. So we're going to cover this and only this and the rest of the stuff I want to talk about, including some other pretty big scandals going on at the time. This one's kind of drowned out two other things that are happening. One with a guarantee being removed of the Golden Nugget. The other one being suspected cheating at a 50K World Series event. So those are actually more important stories than this one, but this is the more exciting story. This is the sexier story. This is the story that people want to hear about. So I'm giving the people what they want, and I'm going to do this story right now because it's timely, because it just happened. And then we'll get to the other stuff pretty soon. I do want to do another episode pretty soon to cover the other stuff in the World Series, because it has been 4 weeks since I was on. And by the way, I was briefly at the World Series. I didn't play much this World Series, in case you're wondering, but I did play 2 events. Did not cash, but we're not going to talk about it today either. So we will move on right now to talk about the scandal itself. The Millionaire Maker event is one that began in the 2010s. And it's been a very popular event at the World Series. So it was invented originally to have the top prize be guaranteed as $1 million. That's why it was called the Millionaire Maker. People loved it. It caught on very quickly. So the World Series ran it every year since. So now it's a staple at the World Series of Poker. It's always been a $1,500 freeze out, meaning you can buy in once and only once. And if you bust, that's it. So it still is a very popular event. I try to play it if it's fitting within my schedule, though I haven't been able to make it the last few years. But if I'm around for it and it's not interfering with other events, I do play it. I was not in it this year. Pretty close to being in it this year, but I just couldn't make it. Anyway, since it's a big field event, a lot of times the people who get to the end are not particularly well known. But this time, actually, the 2 people who made it to heads up, they're not household names in poker, but they're 2 guys who have had some success in poker. One of them has 2 WPT titles, and the other one has 3 bracelets at the World Series of Poker. And in fact, those 3 bracelets were 1 per year from 2022 to 2024. So these were 2 accomplished players, though they're not household names by any means. And obviously they're good players. Obviously they know what they're doing. Obviously they understand everything very well as far as tournaments and the expectations and the rules and all that. So these were not amateurs. That's important to know as well. The 2 people involved that made it to Heads Up, and that's where the story begins, were James Carroll and Jesse Yaganuma. Carroll is the one with no bracelets and 2 WPT titles, and Jesse Yaganuma is the one who has 3 bracelets over the last 3 years prior to this one. It's called the Millionaire Maker, and originally it was conceived as something that was just going to make one person a millionaire, but because they're getting a lot of interest in this event, and the fields are getting bigger, they actually were able to crown 2 millionaires this year, and they adjusted the payments artificially to enable this. So the payout structure was atypical. The payout structure involved a 1.2 million prize for first and about $1 million for second. And if you know anything about tournament payment structures, there's usually a much bigger difference between first and second. Usually first and second have a pretty large difference. Sometimes it's as much as double. And if it's not double, it's fairly close. Like you'll have something where it's 80% more than second place or 60% more than second place. It's not something like this where second place is going to be about 85% of what first place is. But this happened because they wanted to make it to where they're going to be 2 millionaires, because that looks even better. And that's fine. You know, they can adjust this whatever way they want. But that actually kind of partially played into what happened here. That wasn't the cause of what happened here, but it was an indirect factor to what ended up happening here. Now let's go away from the World Series for a moment and talk about ClubWPTGold, which I've discussed before on the show. ClubWPTGold is an online poker site that's an offshoot from the WPT. They've been spending a lot of money since late last year aggressively promoting it. In December of 2024, they put on a $5 million free roll at the Wynn and were handing out seats to it like candy. In fact, I got one of those seats. A lot of people were in that event who are known in poker, a lot of people who are not very known in poker. A lot of people got seats to that thing, which were worth like $2,500 each. I forget the exact number, but it was a pretty good free roll. It wasn't like a free roll where you're getting a ticket worth $100. I mean, this is a 4-figure free roll that you could win fairly easily, as I did, and play for a $5 million prize pool, completely free. So this was all done to promote ClubWPTGold back in December. Now, that's not what has to do with this story, but I'm just trying to have you understand that there's a lot of promotional dollars behind in most of the U.S. Well, that's because ClubWPTGold is one of those so-called sweepstakes sites, which uses what they think is a loophole in the law to allow people to play something like poker and making it look like sweepstakes. I don't know if this would really hold up to scrutiny. I have a feeling if this were to be challenged by authorities who claim this is illegal gambling, I have a feeling they would lose. I have a feeling they would have to close down. But for whatever reason, the WPT feels that this is legal and they are going to go forward with it, maybe because they see other sweepstakes sites like Global Poker exist for many years without being challenged. So maybe they wanted to get a piece of that pie. In any case, this has been running, and they've really been aggressively trying to get customers to it. They also are engaging in a lot of guerrilla and trollish marketing. And in fact, they hired one of the biggest trolls in poker to man their X account, and that is Seriously Serious. He is the main guy running that account, and he puts up a lot of funny content, and it's a very entertaining account. And you really should follow the ClubWPTGold X account. It is funny, and they do a lot to criticize and mock their competition. especially ACR. They really hate ACR, but also sometimes the World Series. Just any competitor, any major competitor to theirs, they like to mock. Now, for whatever reason, they don't mention Global Poker. I never see them mention Global Poker, but the WSOP and ACR, they love to make fun of on their X account. So this is not a company that's afraid to get down and dirty and do edgy things and to attack the competition. And some people have found it to be distasteful. Some have said it's unprofessional. Some have said it's even unethical. I don't agree. We've seen this for decades in other industries. If you were around in the 80s, you probably remember the Cola Wars between Pepsi and Coke. And a lot of that went on back then, except it wasn't in social media, of course. So I have no problem with that type of marketing. In fact, it's more entertaining than just typical advertising. But that's what ClubWPTGold does. So during the World Series, ClubWPTGold put on an interesting promotion. They called it the Gold Rush. The Gold Rush has tickets that are called Gold Rush tickets, and you can win them while you're playing on ClubWPTGold. And if you do win a Gold Rush ticket, then you have a chance to get a substantial boost if you win a bracelet in one of 11 events that they have specified that this ticket is good for. So that's really all the ticket buys you, is it buys you the chance to get an extra
$1 million
if you win one of those 11 designated events and if you have the Gold Rush ticket. On their webpage about it, it says there's $11 million up for grabs this summer. Step 1, sign up for ClubWPTGold. 2, win a Gold Rush ticket in daily Gold Rush ticket free roll. 3, win one of 11 eligible summer majors and take home $1 million Gold Rush bonus. 4, use your Gold Rush ticket to play the $1 million SC Gold Rush free roll on July 13th. So they have some other free roll too for $1 million. So they named 11 events that you can play, and one of them was the Millionaire Maker. So again, if you have a Gold Rush ticket and just win a bracelet at an event they did not list on that webpage, then you won't get the extra $1 million. But if you do win one of those, then they will really award you $1 million. And in fact, someone already won $1 million in that fashion. And that one was very uncontroversial. There was no chip dumping. There was nothing that looked weird or off. The guy just won it. He happened to have a golden ticket, so he got paid $1 million. So it looks like they are investing $11 million in this, and plus whatever the $1 million SC Gold Rush free roll is. I don't know how the SC system works because I haven't played on the site yet, but that's probably a fair amount. Maybe it's another $1 million. I don't know what an SC is worth, but that's worth something too. But at minimum, they're putting up $11 million in real money, potentially, by giving these tickets out and then giving $1 million to anyone who has a ticket and wins an event. Now, it's very unlikely that it would be anywhere near $11 million because that would mean every single winner of these 11 events would have the Gold Rush ticket. So most people in these events are not going to have this. But, some people do. So they did have one winner, and then they had another person who made the final table of the Millionaire Maker, and that was Jesse Yaganuma, and he had one of those tickets. He was the only one at that final table to have one of those tickets. But if Jesse Yaganuma managed to win, then he would get another $1 million just like that other guy did. So this would be the second $1 million that ClubWPTGold would be giving away. Jesse Yaganuma actually had decent chips, so he had a decent shot at making it. And he did get all the way down to heads up. So it was Jesse Yaganuma versus James Carroll, as I told you before. James Carroll did not have a gold ticket, so if he won, then nothing additional was going to be awarded. I bet you see where this is going. And remember, there's only $200K difference between first and second. It's about $1 million and $1.2 million. But then another $1 million on top of it if Yaganuma ends up winning. So it didn't take a genius for them to realize that there was an incentive for Yaganuma to win. The problem was that Yaganuma came in with a pretty big chip deficit heads up. He was down 9-1 in chips. He had about 30 million chips, and Carol had about 270 million chips. So when you come in with that kind of deficit, it's very hard to win. It happens sometimes, but it's very hard to win with that sort of deficit. The vast majority of the time, the one who comes in with that big chip lead heads up is going to ultimately win the event. So it didn't look very likely at that point that Yaganuma was going to be able to pull it off. He was going to get close all the way to second, but second was not going to get him anything additional. There is apparently a long break between when it was three-handed and when it went to heads up. So after the third place guy busted, there was a long break, and Yaganuma and Carol were seen quietly talking to each other in the hallway. Now, that's not entirely unusual. Sometimes the two opponents will talk to one another, especially if they know each other or just whatever, just passing the time. It doesn't necessarily mean that something's wrong. I will say in most cases, heads-up opponents don't really talk to each other very much on breaks because they're battling each other for a bracelet, and they're kind of foes at that point. Even if they have no personal issue with each other, you really don't hang out with a person that you're trying to beat and win a bracelet against. And you especially don't want to give anything away to them. So I can tell you, when I played for a bracelet, I did not talk to the guy who finished second on breaks. We went our separate ways. And he was a nice guy, nothing against him, but I was not interested in talking to him on breaks because I was trying to beat him, and he probably thought the same of me. And when I finished third, same thing. I didn't go talk to my opponents on breaks. When I finished fourth, same thing. I didn't talk to my opponents on breaks, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's very common. But these two were talking to each other, and they seemed to be talking in very hushed tones. And it seemed to take a while for them to come back. I don't know when they were supposed to come back, but of course the match can't begin until they both come back, or at least one comes back. Because, what could they do if they both don't come back, right? Even if the chips blind out, it'll blind out back and forth. So they really can't get going until both of them come back. So I don't know if the long delay is because they didn't come back fast enough, or they just had a long delay for production reasons. This was being streamed, which is very important. So this is all right there on Poker Go, and you can still watch it right now. You'll probably be able to watch it forever. So they knew the cameras were on them, too. And I bet you know what they were probably talking about. Now, we don't have this confirmed 100%, but if you watch the match and if you listen to my analysis, I think you'll be very, very convinced what they talked about there and what happened. So if you think about it, Yaganuma would get another $1 million if he were to win it. Carol was the overwhelming chip leader. So what if they made some kind of deal where Carol, through the match, allowed Yaganuma to come back and beat him, and then they split the $1 million after the fact? How about something like that? That would benefit both of them, right? Except Carol would get stiffed out of her bracelet. And Carol doesn't have a bracelet yet. So you do have to be willing to give up your first bracelet. You do have to say, okay, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting to finally win a bracelet. Now I'm about to, and now it's being pitched to me, hey, you can make a lot of extra money, but you got to give up that bracelet. But a lot of people would do it because $500K is a lot. So anyway, we don't know what kind of deal was made, but presumably one was made. Carol had been playing very well up until this point. Yaganuma had been playing well up until this point. So it was two pros who were good playing one another heads up. We thought we were going to see, albeit one with a 9-1 chip lead over the other, so it probably wasn't going to last very long. And all of a sudden, James Carroll turned into a fish. He was doing all the wrong things. He was raising and betting at all the wrong times, and he was just doing everything in his power to lose, it seemed. But of course, you know how poker is. It doesn't matter if you get it all in with pocket aces against ace-king, which is a 95% favorite for the aces. Still, 1 out of 20 times, the ace-king is going to be victorious. And also, you don't know what your opponent has. So it's not quite so simple to chip dump in this situation where one guy barely has any chips, because all it takes is an all-in and a call where the worst hand gets lucky and the entire attempt to throw the match is ruined. So the only way you can really do this effectively is by avoiding an all-in until the guy you want to win has most of the chips. And prior to that, when the guy who you want to win has fewer chips, especially when he's very low, then you just have to make sure that the short stacked guy never has his tournament life at risk and loses the absolute minimum. You just need him to be able to grind the chip leader down until he takes the lead and then takes a bigger lead, and then finally they can get it in. That's the only way to really guarantee it happening. But there's still the problem of how do you know what your opponent has? It's not like you can see. I mean, yeah, they can have an agreement to dump chips, but it's harder to do when you don't know what the other guy has. What if you accidentally dump chips into something very strong? The way that it can be done is through signals, through some kind of signal, basically saying, I'm betting and I have it, or I'm betting and I don't have it, so you can raise me, and I can fold and it'll look okay. The problem is this is really, really difficult to pull off on a stream with very little preparation. It's not like they had days or weeks to prepare for this. They had minutes to prepare for this. So it's very hard to pull this off and convince the people watching, who tend to be very knowledgeable about poker. In fact, many pros are watching this. So this is not an easy thing to pull off, to have someone who's coming in down 9-1 in chips and convince everyone that his comeback is a legitimate comeback, and do that at the same time without ever putting yourself at risk of busting if you get unlucky. See, they could have just both played wildly and had some signals and just hoped that Yaganuma was going to come back because there were some attempts to dump it off. But when you're that cautious to not put Yaganuma ever at risk of busting, then there's really no way to play this off as anything but a chip dump. So they were that careful that they didn't want this to happen, and of course this led to everyone figuring out what was really happening. So if you want to watch it, you can either go to the thread on the Poker Fraud Alert forum. It's called So It Looks Like a WSOP Bracelet was just blatantly chip dumped right on stream. Or you can search for it on Poker Go. It's called the 2025 WSOP $1,500 Millionaire Maker Final Table. Either way, you can find it on YouTube. It is a very long video, but we're not going to watch the long video. We're going to jump all the way to the 3-hour, 9-minute, and 31-second mark. And that's just when that break was ending and they were starting heads up. Now, I'm not going to just let it run because there's certain timestamps I'm going to jump to that I'm going to discuss, and I'm going to tell you the timestamps, and you can follow along yourself. Again, this is an audio show. Even on YouTube, it's going to be an audio show. So you can play this on a different device or another screen or another window, whatever it might be, and you can just jump along with me if you want to actually watch it. But I will describe it to you. It's not required to watch it to understand what's happening. Again, I'm not trying to convince you. You'll become very quickly convinced if you just watch this without commentary, but I just want to show you how blatant this was, and then we'll talk about all the issues that have sprung from it. So again, we're going to start out at 3:09:31 and skip around from there. That's the beginning of the heads up portion.
Nevada, 5 days ago, 11,996 players started this journey.
So 11,000 people.
All of them with the dream, the hope of getting to this situation. Heads up for a bracelet. You blocked up $1 million. You're playing for a little bit over 200,000, and pretty amazing. James Carroll heads up 11.
Okay, so before we hear about the two players, that's David Tuchman, who is talking right there. He's also with Joe Stapleton, who is also commentating. You're going to mostly hear from Tuchman, but Stapleton will sometimes comment as well. And they're both experienced in doing this sort of thing, especially Tuchman. So they realize soon enough what's really happening. But at this point, obviously they don't know because play has not started heads up yet. And up to this point, I should say, nothing fishy was going on. I don't know for sure, but my opinion is that the deal to dump the chips off was made during this break, and that when it was 3-handed, 4-handed, 5-handed, etc., they were all playing normally. That is my guess about the whole thing. There's some conspiracy theorists who think otherwise on X, but they don't really provide any evidence of this. No one has tried to really make a strong case that that's what happened. Just they're saying, well, it could have happened. I don't think it happened. I really think this deal was made as it was going to heads up, and I think everything was kosher up until then. So that's why I'm starting at this point.
5. Very impressive.
Solid.
So James Carroll, they just showed in the 16 matches he played in his tournament life. Now, this is not 16 World Series matches where he's made first or second, but in the 16 times he's made first or second, where he's playing for some kind of win, that he was 11-5. So that's a pretty good heads-up record, that he's won 11 out of 16 times that he got heads-up in a tournament.
Again, this guy, two-time WPT champion. Generally on the side of the table, though, not too shabby. 4 and 6 heads up, but 3 of those were for bracelets.
Wow.
Remember, he has won a bracelet in 3 consecutive years here at the World Series of Poker. I'm David Tuchman, alongside me, the one and only Joe Stapleton. Take a look at our Splash Sports tournament.
Okay, so we're going to skip over now to 3:14:32, about 4 minutes later, so not very far into it. That is the first hand that's already a little bit suspect. Not terribly suspect, but a little bit suspect.
He's not going to try. He checks. Going to try to realize his equity. Another card here. Carl not going to bet.
He's got a hand he probably wants to show down.
In this hand, there's already a semi-questionable spot. Yaganuma is very short here. He has not made any headway here. He's basically got what he started with, the 30 million or so. And he only has 28 million left, holding 2 overcards with king-queen suited on a 6-3-2 jack board with 2 of his suit. He has king-queen of hearts. There's 2 hearts on the board. The second heart hit the turn. 6-3-2 is the flop, jack the turn. So he's got overcards and a flush draw. Carroll has 5-3 offsuit. The way this hand went down was that it was a check both ways on the flop, and then on the turn, Carroll checked again, which is already a little bit passive here when you're just holding a pair of 3s, but probably the best hand. And you'd think at that point, Yaganuma would put some pressure on, because he's almost surely got outs here. And there's a decent chance he has the best hand, and if he doesn't, there's a decent chance he can catch up, or that if he doesn't have the best hand, that Carroll doesn't have strong enough to call. So you'd think, given how short his stack is, he would put pressure on and put his last 28 million in there. But you can say, okay, maybe he's waiting for a better spot. There's only 1 card left to come. Maybe he's being trapped, and he doesn't want to have to draw 1 card to stay alive. So he checked 2. So, okay, it's possible that this was just Yaganuma being conservative, but it wasn't. That's what people thought. Then, if you continue watching, you'll see Yaganuma going all in with hands like pocket 4s and king-queen offsuit pre-flop. Now, that's standard when you're short-stacked. Nothing wrong with that. Heads up. However, both times it followed a limp by James Carroll. So to me, this looked like whenever James Carroll would limp from the big blind, that was a signal to Yaganuma that a weak hand is there, and all he has to do is shove in, and he'll get a fold. So that's what the limp seemed to mean. You never saw a limp and then a call. It was always a limp, and then if pressure is put on, he's going to fold. So sure enough, that's what happened when Yaganuma shoved with a 4-4 and king-queen. So again, nothing wrong with shoving with those hands pre-flop when you're short, but it was limped both times before that, so he knew he could shove without getting a call. At the 3:19:15 mark, you can see that Carroll raises pre-flop but doesn't show his cards to the camera, which is weird. Usually players are pretty good about this, about putting their cards on the camera to be seen. They're told to do that. They usually cooperate with this pretty well. In this event, he did not. And often the hands were being hidden, which was already suspect there. The exact reason for this, like what they were trying to accomplish, is not known. But this was the first time it happened at 3:19:15. So you don't see what Carroll has. He raises pre-flop, and we can't see what he has. Yaganuma does show his cards. And actually, this was the third time this happened overall. Yaganuma didn't show his cards twice earlier, but this is the first time Carroll didn't show his cards. So you'll see this at 3:19:15. Yaganuma has king 10 offsuit, and Carroll, who raised pre-flop, he has something we don't know.
Oh, no. I think another one of those things that
you got vetoed.
The bosses put the kibosh on that. Yeah,
got
exactly.
It. I was going to say, I can't imagine that gentleman saying, no, I don't want attention.
So Yaganuma thinks there's a $5 million
heads up, especially when you're short.
$5 million chip raise against him.
Yaganuma, as you can see, he's just got 11 big blinds. He's going to make the call, So
he has 11 big blinds, chooses not to go all in with the King 10, facing a raise. He just calls. The blinds are 1.2 million, 2.4 million, 2.4 million. So this was essentially a min raise by Carroll to 5 million, and Yaganuma calls the other 2.6 million, but then does not have that much left there at that point. He has about 26 million left at that point.
What Carroll has?
But Carroll doesn't show what he has.
Plays out.
And the flop comes Ace 6-6. So in that situation, it's very possible that Yaganuma has the best hand, that Carroll, he did raise pre-flop, but he's out of position, and if he doesn't have an ace or a 6 on an Ace 6-6 rainbow board, he's going to feel kind of uncomfortable. So even if Yaganuma doesn't have the best hand with King High, he can represent it, and it's hard for Carroll to deal with out of position. Now, it's true he only has a short stack, Yaganuma, so Carroll could just call with any pair, I guess. But we don't know Carroll's cards. Anyway, what ends up happening was 6 million was bet by Carroll, and Yaganuma lets it go. Now, again, I'm not saying he should have gone all in with King High there, even though it could have been the best hand, but lo and behold, it wasn't. Carroll flipped over one card to show Yaganuma what he had, and he flipped over a 6, so he flop trip 6s. So, okay, you could say maybe Yaganuma just got lucky that he only had King High and he folded, so he didn't expect he'd be running into trips when Carroll raises pre-flop like that. But sure enough, Carroll flopped trip 6s, and fortunately Yaganuma only gave away those chips pre-flop. However, this did bring Yaganuma's stack down somewhat, and Yaganuma was down to 18.3 million to Carroll's 281.6 million. And at this point, he is a 15-1 underdog in chips. 15-1 deficit he has. 18.3 million to 281.6 million. So you keep hearing about 9-1, 10-1. No. This is 15-1 about 9 minutes into the heads-up match. That's very tough to come back from. Well, then it got stranger. And more obvious. Now, again, at this point, the blinds were 1.2 million, 2.4 million, 2.4 million. Yaganuma was down to about 7 big blinds. Even if there's a chip dump attempt going on, when the shorter person who you want to see win has 7 big blinds, you have to be very careful not to accidentally bust your opponent. At 3:22:34, Carroll is dealt King 2 suited on the button, which is not a bad hand heads up. What does he do? He open folds it, which is really weird. It's one thing to limp, because maybe he doesn't want to raise and then get shoved all in on, and then have to double him up when he only has King 2. But to open fold it is really weird when you're the one with the chips. The standard play there is to either raise or go all in with it. And if the guy's got you beat, he's got you beat. He's so short at the moment, he's not going to hurt you much anyway. But instead, he open folds King 2 suited. It's not like he open folded 7-3 offsuit. He open folded King 2 suited as the 15-1 chip leader when he's on the button. So that was already very suspect. Strangely enough, Tuchman and Stapleton did not comment on that one. It kind of got by them. They were talking about something else. But the really controversial hand that really got everybody's attention happened at 3:24:28. And if you only watch one hand here, you should watch this one, where Yaganuma has 7-5 offsuit and Carroll has 10-6 offsuit. So Yaganuma limps with it, and Carroll checks with his 10-6 offsuit. So that's very standard. A lot of times in a heads-up, no-limit situation, the button will limp with a weak hand, and the big blind, who's out of position, will be happy just to see the flop for free and check. So that's not something out of the ordinary. So 7-5 offsuit versus 10-6 offsuit. But unfortunately for our alleged chip dumpers, they both hit the flop, which is a nightmare for them unless the one who was the leader on that flop was the one that they want to see win, which unfortunately for them was not. So remember, Carroll has 10-6, Yaganuma has 7-5, and they both hit the flop of 7-6-6 with Yaganuma very short.
Yeah, I mean, I think he understands that Yaganuma is not going to be he's going to be calling and folding correctly, and I think my guess is he just doesn't want to kind of give that spot up.
Strip sixes again.
4.
Okay, it's over, right?
It's a top pair.
So they're saying, okay, it's over, right? It's top pair. So what they're talking about here is that Yaganuma is so short, and Carroll is betting out $4 million at him with trips. Yaganuma has top pair. I guess you can call it two pair. He's got 7-5 on a 7-6-6 board. You just can't let that go when you're that short. There's no way to make that lay down. You're ahead of too many hands there. You just cannot let that go because you're way too short. You can't wait for a better spot than this, or you're just going to get blinded down. You've just got to make your move, and if the guy's got you beat, he's got you beat, and then you hope to hit your 2-outer. So that's why they're saying it's over now. So Carroll bet $4 million. At the time, they were not suspecting anything. They just expected Yaganuma is going to go all in. Carroll's going to snap call, and unless that 7 hits, it's going to be over, and Carroll's going to be the winner. That's what you'd expect to happen in a standard match. But this is anything but that. So listen to what happens next.
I assume this is it, right? I mean, we got trip sixes versus top pair. Yaganuma started the hand with 8 big blinds.
I mean, he got away from it last time. Granted, he only had king high when he was up against trips.
Yeah, but you got a pair. How do you get away from this? I mean, unless the deck helps you out and you hit a 7. Or some sort of straight. I mean, it's just hard to imagine a scenario where the chips don't go in here.
Looks like Jesse is imagining such a scenario.
So it looks like Yaganuma's thinking,
and
he throws it away.
My good. Does Carroll have some kind of crazy live tell?
I don't understand.
Tuchman's dumbfounded. He's like, I don't understand. And Stapleton's like, maybe Carroll has some kind of really obvious live tell, and Yaganuma got from him that he had trip sixes. They didn't get it yet. They didn't understand quite yet what was going on. He could not believe that Yaganuma did not get in his final $17 million when the blinds are 1.2, 2.4, 2.4 million when he has top pair. How do you not do that? Well, you don't do that when you don't want to lose. Now remember, the bet from Carroll was $4 million. And the bet from Carroll was, I believe, $6 million on that other hand where he had trip sixes. So we've had $6 million and $4 million bets, and both times Yaganuma folded. This time, the amazing fold with barely any chips left when he was crushed, but when it looked like to him that he was doing very well. Then they weren't showing their cards to the camera very well for several minutes. Another significant hand occurred at 3:30:35. So we're going to go there. Carroll was dealt aces on the button. Now, Carroll had not gone all in from the button yet in this heads-up match. He never just went all in. At no point had he done this. And Yaganuma was still back to around what he started with in this match. He had 32-point-something million. So Carroll, in all these other hands, he never once just went all in. Because when you do that, then it makes it pretty tough for your opponent to call. So when you have aces and you want your opponent to call, especially when he's short. See, one problem with aces is that they can be hard to get away from in a heads-up situation. So sometimes you don't want to let in your opponent too cheaply, where they're only going to put in a lot of action if they have you beat, and then you have to worry if they're calling too much or raising too much, and then you have to start wondering, okay, are they trying to bluff me, or are they overvaluing their top pair, or do they have a draw? And then you can end up calling off a lot of your chips with aces when they've made some kind of freak hand. So you have to watch out with aces and charge someone pre-flop in order to be able to see a flop at all with their inferior hand, which can catch up. However, in a short stack situation, you don't have to worry about that because you can't really lose that much. So when you have aces, you really want your opponent to give you action. So it's fine to limp with them. It's fine to raise with them and hope you get re-raised back all in. You don't want to go all in to to where your opponent is probably going to fold most hands. But that's exactly what he did.
Down, and he looks at Ike and he goes, "You blinked your eyes, you have a set." And Ike did have a set. And he folded, which is amazing that you can call someone for having a set for blinking. Okay, that's aces. That's a good hand. Top 3 hand right there.
Now, it's true that Yaganuma only had 6-2s offsuit, so it was a quick fold, and that's a justified fold, of course. But that's the only time he went all in, was with aces. So obviously, if this is a chip dump, and they don't want Yaganuma to lose, Yaganuma knows that Carroll's not going to go all in, unless that's a signal, hey, you better fold right now. So can you imagine going all in with aces? Now, why would he do that? Why wouldn't he just raise with the aces, and then have Yaganuma maybe call, and then kind of signal from there? Well, what he doesn't want is for Yaganuma to flop something strong, but not strong enough to beat aces, and then have to get his chips in. He doesn't even want it where Yaganuma flops ahead of him, like with 2-pair, because then if they get it in, there's a possibility that Carroll could catch up, like if there's a counterfeit situation or an ace hits, and then Yaganuma loses, and it's over. So they really want to avoid this all-in run-out situation where Yaganuma can bust. So the only way to avoid that is to just make him fold pre-flop, and he didn't know that Yaganuma would have 6-2s offsuit, so he could have had a stronger hand, like Queen 10 offsuit or something that's reasonable to call a pre-flop bet, pre-flop raise. So he just goes all in to pretty much give the signal, hey, I've got something strong, get out of here. And that's what he did. It's the only time he went all in pre like that was with the pocket aces, the time where you want to call in a normal situation, and here he's doing all he can to where Yaganuma is not going to call. Skipping forward 9 minutes to 3:39:35, there was an interesting hand where Carroll had King 9, and you could not see Yaganuma's hand. Again, one of the hands was not shown to the camera. And on the river, Carroll still only had King High. It was Queen 4, 10, 10, 8 on the board. And Carroll bet 5 million. Yaganuma folded. Now, here's what's interesting. People were noticing a pattern that when an odd number of chips was bet, this meant that Carroll did not have it and was bluffing. When Carroll would bet an even number of chips, that meant he did have it. And that seemed consistent throughout the match. That didn't seem to apply to Yaganuma, but it did seem to apply to Carroll. So the times when Carroll had the trip sixes, both times, he bet 4 million and 6 million. But with the King High, he bet 5 million. 5 single $1 million chips. So he was indicating he did not have it. He had no pair. However, Yaganuma, we couldn't see his hand. We never got to see his hand. He actually folded, and that's probably because he didn't have enough to call. He probably had worse than King High at that point because they just checked down to get there. So that was a little bit interesting. That was one of the earlier odd bets that we got to see. That was this apparent signal. But unfortunately, Yaganuma couldn't take advantage of it because the only way to win the hand would be to raise him and get a fold, and that would just look too obvious if he had absolute junk and all of a sudden raises him. That would look too much like a soul read. So he just let it go and figured, hey, I'll do this in a better spot. At 3:41:05, about a minute and a half later, Carroll has 7-5 and has a 9-5-3 flop. What does he bet? He bets 4 million, 4 chips. That's even. So Yaganuma folds. What does he have? He has King 2, just King High. Of course, that's a standard fold. But again, notice the even chips that are being bet at that point when Carroll has hit something. Now, as you might notice, Yaganuma is still losing a lot of hands despite this apparent agreement to chip dump. And that's just because he's just so card dead, he can't accumulate chips. Now, that's not going to last forever, obviously, but that's why for a while here, he didn't really go anywhere. He wasn't busting, but he wasn't going anywhere. At 3:49:50, finally Yaganuma gets something. He gets King 9 on a 9-6-2 board, and he bets 3.5 million. Now, this was the only time I saw someone bet something 0.5. I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, but from what I saw, Yaganuma's bets didn't really follow any pattern. It was Carol's bets that followed the pattern, which then Yaganuma could react to. So Yaganuma bet 3.5 million, which the amount doesn't really matter here. And then Carol with Queen 10, so he didn't hit any of that board, 629, with Queen 10 raised to 9 million. Now, 9 million is odd. That's right. It's 9 chips. So, of course, that's a signal I don't have anything. So what does Yaganuma do? Well, of course, knowing that he's the one with better hand, he shoves all in. And since it was being signaled to him by that odd bet that Carol didn't have anything, he knew Carol would fold. He knew he wouldn't have to run it out and have his pair of 9s hold up. He knew he would get a fold. So that's why he went all in. So basically the 9-chip bet is saying, I'm raising you, but I don't really have it, so re-raise me and I'll fold. That's what that means. And that's what happened. Very interesting hand at 352.25. Yaganuma has pocket 2s and limps. Carol has Jack 9 offsuit and checks. The flop is 3 King 6, so both people are missed by this. Yaganuma's pocket 2s have not improved, and Carol's Jack 9 has gone nowhere. Well, Carol from the big blind fires out 5 million, which is, of course, 5 chips, which is, of course, an odd number. So that's indicating, hey, I'm bluffing. Yaganuma then makes it 14 million with his deuces unimproved. And, of course, Carol folds. Isn't that an amazing soul read? That with pocket 2s lower than the entire board and nowhere to go with it, that he makes it 14 million. He raises the bet out into him. He just knows to do that somehow with his very limited chip stack. He knows he's going to get a fold and does. What a soul read. Well, finally at 355.41, I'm going to play you this part. David Tuchman cannot stand it. David Tuchman knows what's going on at this point. I think he discovered it sometime before that, but now he felt comfortable vocalizing it, at least in a passive-aggressive sort of fashion. And from that point, the floodgates opened, and he had a lot to say about what was going on there and started to get more and more blatant about how he felt about this.
Hands you don't think you're conventionally going to move all in with those kind of hands, right? But Yaganuma is just seemingly always knows where he's at.
So that was his first comment about how there's some hands that you wouldn't expect all-ins from that Yaganuma is going all in with, but that Yaganuma seemingly always knows where he's at. So that's already the vocalization of the suspicion that something is wrong here. At 358.08, Tuchman stops being as subtle. Yaganuma limped with King 4 off. Carol raised to 9 million. Again, notice it's an odd number with Jack 10 offsuit. Remember, Yaganuma only has King 4 offsuit. So Tuchman is saying, as Yaganuma is thinking, what do you think he's going to do here? So I'm going to play you that part. It's pretty funny. That's where Tuchman's basically really letting the audience know, yeah, this isn't kosher.
Carol raising
9 million.
I want you to make a prediction. What does Yaganuma do here?
I think he's going to fold.
I bet you he shoves.
You picked up a read also, buddy?
I don't know. It's the way Yaganuma likes to do it.
The way he likes to do it.
Yeah, look at this. Not going to move all in, but he is going to raise.
Re-raise.
See? You just got to feel it. Like limp in. I mean, Yaganuma likes to set this little trap, and Carol falls for it.
We're all falling for it.
You're 1-1, by the way, in the prediction game, Joe.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know you figured out the tell.
I mean, I'll tell you, Yaganuma it's hard because he is not a predictable player.
Well, I think Carol's fairly predictable now.
Yeah, there you go. Carol lets it go.
So remember, it's not like this re-raise was done with a strong hand. Yaganuma limps in with King 4 offsuit. Carol raises an odd number of chips with Jack 10 offsuit, which is not a bad hand, but he makes an odd number chip raise, and that's a signal to Yaganuma, if you re-raise me, I will fold. So that made Yaganuma re-raise him with just king 4 offsuit, knowing he'll get a fold. Because it doesn't matter what you have at that point if you know your opponent is going to fold. So basically that signal says, my hand is not strong enough to call a re-raise. So go ahead and re-raise me, I'm going to toss it. That's what that signal meant, and that's what he did. So at this point, the commentators were not taking the bullshit anymore. They decided that even though they were working for Poker Go, even though they're supposed to do what's good for the broadcast, that they can stay silent no longer. So good for them. Good for them not pretending this is normal and that this is anything but a chip dump. They didn't say, hey, everybody, there's chips being dumped here, but they got less and less subtle to where all but the dimmest viewer would realize what was going on. So I give them credit there, David Tuchman and Joe Stapleton, for doing that. At 4-14-47, and this is after a series of hands where Yaganuma just kept chipping up but never put himself at risk, never even put a lot of chips at risk once he took the lead. But at 4-14-47, Yaganuma limped with Jack-8 offsuit, and Carroll raised to 13 million. An odd number of chips again. And he had 6-3 offsuit. And this time, Yaganuma didn't shove over him. He just called. The reason he didn't shove over him was at this point, he had the chip lead. And he figured, hey, if I shove in here with the Jack-8, it's going to look weird. Because I don't have enough of a chip lead to where I have to shove in with anything. So I don't want to shove in and make him fold. It'll just look weird, even though I know he will fold. I'd rather see what we flop and go from there. Nice enough for Yaganuma, he flopped top pair, and Carroll had absolutely nothing. Carroll had 6-3 off, and the board was Jack-10-5. So Carroll completely missed. So despite completely missing, Carroll bet, yes, an odd number of chips, 17 million. And I'll let you listen to this hand because it's quite a peach, this hand. You're going to enjoy this hand. At this point, they're not even trying to hide it very well anymore.
Going to go to 13 million. Yaganuma with the Jack-8. He moved all in with Jack-8 last time.
So this is the point when it's calling pre-flop.
Call. Oh, we got a flop.
All right.
They're just kind of laughing about this at this point, the commentators. So here's the flop of the Jack-10-5.
Oh, top pair. A legit hand.
Yeah, Carroll with absolutely nothing. How many chips does he bluff off?
9 million.
No, he's going to bluff
17 million.
Yeah.
All in and call?
I mean, if you're Yaganuma, you're probably just call this, right? Give your opponent enough rope to hang himself.
Sure, that's right.
So he does. Yaganuma just calls. They predicted it right because the odd bet means I have nothing. I have nothing. I have none of this. So Yaganuma's like, okay, well then top pair is very strong. Then there's a good chance he can't catch anything on the turn to get ahead of me. So he just calls, just lets him bluff, chips into him. So then comes the turn. The turn is actually
WWE's a little bit more creative than mine is.
A good turn for Carroll.
63 million in the pot, and Carroll's got 6 high. I mean, there are a lot of turn cards that come off here, and he's drawing dead.
But he wasn't. This was a good hand, a good turn for him. A 7 of clubs. Now, they both had a club, and Yaganuma had the higher club, so the club wasn't going to help him. But with 5-7 now on the board, the 6-3 was actually drawing live to a 4. So they have to be very careful here that they don't get it in, and then the off-suited 4 comes. You know, it wouldn't be super common, but it can happen. You know, it's still 3 outs. The off-suited 4 could come, and it wouldn't bust Yaganuma, but it would make him really short again because they were fairly even in chips coming into this with Yaganuma being a little bit ahead. So they really don't want this to be a situation where a fluke happens and Yaganuma's got to start all over again trying to build up. So what happens here with the 7 now that gives him a few outs?
That's not one of them. He could catch a 4. Club is no good.
Now, of course, Carroll doesn't know exactly what Yaganuma has, so he's trying to think, what should I bet? It's got to be odd to show I don't have anything, but what should I bet? What should I do here? I've picked up a gut shot. He doesn't know if his club might be good if it hits, so he doesn't know what Yaganuma has. So he's trying to think, what can I bet other than making it odd? What's a good thing to bet? Should I bet anything and then just fold to a raise? Like, what should I do here to give him the signal that I've got mostly nothing, but I can possibly catch you?
Almost incomprehensible how Carroll has given up this chip lead.
So he just decides to check. He decides, you know what? I'm afraid here that if I bet and you call, that even if it's an odd bet, it's going to allow me to catch up somehow, especially with that club, and then we're going to have a problem. So I'm just going to check and let Yaganuma do the betting.
And we haven't had an all-in.
It's almost incomprehensible.
So Yaganuma's thinking, okay, how do I sell this? So he decides to check it back. Instead of betting, he decides to check it back because he wants to allow Carroll to get something that will allow more chips to be dumped off.
Okay.
Oh, he sets the trap. Does Carroll fall for it? He's got 6 high.
So on the river is a queen of spades that changes nothing. 6 high for Carroll at the end. Yaganuma has second pair.
I mean, if you find yourself at the river with 6 high, and
you got to bluff.
You've got to. How much does he go for here?
They're being sarcastic, of course.
35 million.
They're just abused with this whole thing.
$57 million.
$57 million. This is going to be an incredibly difficult call for Yaganuma. Does he have it in him?
I think he does.
Let's see. You're 1 for 1 in your predictions.
$57 million into this. Notice it's an odd number, though. So Yaganuma has to put on the act. He has to pretend he's thinking, and internally he's going, yes, that means he has nothing. That means my second pair is good. That means I just got to sell that I'm thinking about this. I can't snap call something like $57 million when I only have second pair with 3 clubs on the board and with 10 Jack Queen on the board, but I'm going to call. I just got to sell like I'm thinking about it.
I mean, he's only got a pair of jacks. Carroll betting $57 million into 63. This is an enormous pot.
It's a $120 million pot.
This call's going to be so sick.
Yaganuma looking over at Carroll, see if maybe I can get a live read. Can I figure this out?
Ask him if he wants a call.
Still thinking. Fake thinking, that is.
What a call.
It's
unbelievable. It's just unbelievable.
Can't put a foot wrong.
He has, literally done nothing wrong heads up. It's amazing. We've had 55 hands of heads up poker.
So Carroll's laughing at this point. Yaganuma now has $253 million to Carroll's 48. How the tides have turned. At 4/20/20, Carroll raised Yaganuma's King 5 offsuit limp to $13 million. Of course, 13 being an odd number. And Yaganuma knew to go over the top with $51 million and got a fold. So by the end of that hand, Carroll was down to $38 million, and Yaganuma had $261 million, and you know where this was headed. So I'm not going to play the rest of it because obviously they got Carroll short enough, then just let an all-in happen at the right time and just waited for Yaganuma to be the one to win it. And if he didn't win it, then they'd do the same thing to get him back down and do it again. Eventually, Yaganuma was going to win. He did. It didn't take very long, and within about 7 minutes of this point, the whole thing was over of what I've just played you. So Yaganuma was awarded the bracelet. He got $1.255 million, and Carroll got $1.012 million. And of course, most importantly, the bracelet went to Yaganuma, and the $1 million bonus from Club WPT Gold went to Yaganuma. He did it! He got the $1 million! Oh my gosh! What a comeback! Amazing. Amazing poker. Not since Mike Postle played on stream have I seen such amazing reads. I haven't seen it since then. It's been 6 years since I've seen it. Amazing reads by Jesse Yaganuma. Always knew what to do. Came back from 15-1 down. And not just came back from 15-1 down. It's not like he kept shoving all in and getting lucky. He was so good that he came back from 15-1 down, never putting his tournament life at risk. Can you imagine that? How do you do that? Down 15-1 in chips and never had his tournament life at risk. That is astounding poker. Congratulations. Astounding. So how did ClubWPTGold take this? Because given that this was an obvious chip dump, in order to get this $1 million prize, which presumably was going to be split privately down the line, how did ClubWPTGold feel about this, that they were basically cheated out of $1 million? Were they crying foul? Were they refusing to pay? No. They tweeted the following. We just gave away another $1 million. Gold Rush ticket winner with a crazy comeback. Congrats, Jesse Yaganuma. Now, are they stupid? This was posted on the X account of ClubWPTGold. Are they really that dumb? Because I know Seriously Serious. He's the one who runs that account. I presume he's the one who posted this. He's not a dumb guy. How come everybody in the poker world talking about this on X, they saw it, and somehow Seriously Serious and others working with him at ClubWPTGold missed it? Were they this naive? Were they this stupid? Well, obviously not. They must have known. So why did they congratulate him and say they just gave away another $1 million, as if they had already decided? Well, there were some theories that maybe they just didn't want to call attention to the fact that their promotion led to something like this, that maybe this was an ill-advised promotion that messed up the integrity of the World Series. Or maybe they fully knew that something like this could possibly happen, and they were happy that this controversy would be dogging their competitor and make them look bad. We didn't know quite yet. The World Series of Poker had a bigger problem on its hands. See, at least ClubWPTGold was not running that tournament. All they did is offer that $1 million, and what the players did and the way the World Series handled it, that was on them. But the WSOP, this was their tournament, this was their bracelet, and this was their big stage, and they never attempted to put a stop to this. They just let it play out. So how were they to handle this? Because their X account would always announce who was the winner of each event. So how were they going to handle this? Were they going to congratulate Jesse Yaganuma on his fourth bracelet, which was clearly dumped? Well, the answer was yes. They actually posted two tweets. One was congratulating Yaganuma for winning, and the other was congratulating Carroll for his second place finish, getting him $1 million. Well, immediately they got trolled, of course. Everyone was mocking the tweet about Yaganuma especially. So they quickly deleted that one, but they kind of forgot something. They kind of forgot they made two tweets. So they left up the one about James Carroll, which I got to see, and I took a screenshot of because I had a feeling it might be disappearing. I didn't get to see the Yaganuma one. I was told about it by somebody else. But the James Carroll one I did get to see, and in fact I posted a screenshot of it on Poker Fraud Alert. It's no longer there. They eventually deleted that too. But it said James Carroll has finished in second place in event number 53, the $1,500 Millionaire Maker. He takes home $1,012,320. Follow the action on the WSOP Plus app, hashtag WSOP 2025. Now, congratulations, James, for the worst played heads-up match of all time. Congratulations for being a complete fish and not just losing a 15-1 chip lead, but losing it without ever putting the other guy's chips at risk, bluffing at all the wrong times, having no backbone and re-raising or re-bluffing, just putting chips in but folding when you get pressure back, and always putting them in at the wrong time and giving away that you have nothing and getting re-raised and running away like a bitch every time. Good job, James Carroll. What tremendous poker play. This is the guy who's 11-5 heads up, somehow turned into the worst heads-up poker player in history. Congratulations, though. You won $1 million. Poker Go, how did they handle it? Well, they tweeted, "Congratulations to Jesse Aganuma, winner of the 2025 WSOP Millionaire Maker." Now, some people predicted this before it even happened. Not with these two specific guys, but they predicted a long time before this event even took place that something like this might happen. Cookie Monster, who is the winner of the 2024 High Roller Seniors event, he tweeted, "This 1 million Club WPT incentivizes a deal between and among players to facilitate that ticket getting cashed. The million was more than the whole final table made tonight." Now, that wasn't referring to this event. He tweeted this on June 6th when the other guy won an event that was smaller than this one. So he was saying that everybody at the final table did not make more than this. So this was really incentivizing people to dump chips and make a deal. And he was correct. So this wasn't that hard to predict would happen. So obviously this is a bad look. This is a bad look for everyone and everything involved. This was a bad look for the WSOP especially. A bad look in some ways for Club WPTGold. A bad look for Poker Go. A bad look for poker in general. And even a bad look for the players, depending upon the way you look at it. But not every entity in this has the same degree of culpability. Club WPTGold did indirectly cause this situation by having this $1 million promo, which in some of the events was actually more than the top prize. In this one, it was not more, but it was close to the top prize. And the difference between first and second was very small, which really incentivized this. So they indirectly caused this by having such a large promo. If this promo was 100K instead of $1 million, this probably wouldn't have happened. But you can't really blame them. They were simply running a lucrative promotion. And then it resulted in two players acting badly in order to redeem it. So you can't say Club WPTGold needs to be more responsible with what promotions they run. They can run whatever promotions they want, even if it's not their event. They're just giving away money. That's all they're doing. So they can give away whatever they want. It's their money. It's not like they're offering people money to cheat or to do something bad. They're just saying, hey, if you win a bracelet and you have one of our tickets, then you get an extra $1 million. Good for you. So if people then go on to abuse that tournament series as a result of this offer, you can't really blame the ones who were offering the extra money. And I'm sure Club WPTGold knew this when they put out this promotion. Now, Poker Go, were they at fault at all? Well, no. This is awkward for them. They had their broadcasters kind of in a weird position, really wanting to say something about this, but at the same time knowing they're broadcasting for Poker Go, who may not like this. And they're going to have a hard time rebroadcasting this or selling this anywhere, because this is not really what they want to show. They want people to watch Poker Go because they think they're watching real poker action, not rigged poker action. However, Poker Go had to complete the broadcast contractually. So they're not at fault for anything here. It's not like they could have just turned off the camera and say, we're not doing this. They had a contract to broadcast this, and that's what they had to do. And give credit to their commentators, David Tuchman and Joe Stapleton, for making it clear for quite some time that this whole thing wasn't on the level. Now, the WSOP has a lot of problems here. First of all, for whatever reason, they did not stop the match. And they could have stopped the match. They have the right to stop the match. They could have stopped it and said, we're going to take a break. And they could have put the fear of God into both of the players. They could have said, look, we know what you're doing here. We know why you're doing it. But you're not allowed to do it. There are actually rules against this. There are rules that you cannot collude in any way. And it does not say you can't collude if there's 3 or more players. It just says you can't collude. So yes, there is such a thing as heads-up collusion. Heads-up collusion is not cheating anyone else, but it is changing the outcome of the match. So it does say you cannot participate in any kind of collusion, or you can be disqualified and you can be banned. So they could have shown them that rule and said, look, you guys, you're breaking the rules here. We're giving you one chance to stop this crap and play normally, or we are going to disqualify both of you, and neither of you is going to get paid. You think if they got that warning, they would have continued? They would have abandoned the whole thing. They would have gone back to playing normally. They would not have challenged the World Series on this, but they were never stopped. The World Series of Poker never stopped them. They never attempted to interfere. And by the way, the World Series of Poker did have knowledge of what was going on. Of course they did, right? But I know for sure. I'm not just guessing this part. I know for certain from a source that the World Series of Poker knew what was happening and they were very upset about it. But for whatever reason, they did not stop it. Isn't that strange? I don't know why they didn't stop it. I'm just telling you, I know that they were aware of what was happening and they were upset it was happening. But somehow they did not stop this to warn anybody. Big mistake. Now, to be fair, this is not the first known case of shenanigans involving a bracelet. First of all, I'm sure there's been other situations in the past where someone dumped chips in order to facilitate somebody else winning a bracelet, and then they settled behind the scenes. Also, there's been tons of shenanigans with the online bracelets. In fact, I've mentioned before on this show, some people accused former poker pro Mark Herm of having won 2 ghost bracelets online under other people's names. So it's actually said that Mark Herm has 2 additional bracelets that he won by taking over other people's accounts in the middle of a tournament, and he played them and he won, but others got the credit for it. There was also the big Bryn Kenny ghosting and multi-account scandal. And, of course, there was a situation where Jeremy Osmus claimed that he was cheated out of a bracelet in a $7,777 online event that was supposedly won by Jared Strauss, a guy who had been playing $60 tournaments at the South Point before and after entering this high-stakes event and playing really, really well. And Osmus cried foul there, and he had a right to do so. So suffice to say, many of these online bracelets were not won honestly, and the people listed having won those bracelets did not win them in some cases, or at least didn't play in the later stages. A lot of times what happens is the person who's listed sometimes does start off playing, and then if they build up a stack, then a better player takes over. That's what Bryn Kenny was basically accusing of having done in a lot of tournaments, not just online events at the World Series. So yeah, the online bracelet thing's been a disaster, and there's been a lot of bracelets awarded that was not to the person who should have won. So I know that. I understand. Also, there has been a number of online events with low buy-ins and small fields that are like one state only, like Michigan only, Pennsylvania only, and they would get small fields, and they'd be $60 buy-in, and then someone would win and get a bracelet, so that's very cheap too. So those weren't dishonest, but the standard for winning a bracelet there was very low, way too low, way too easy. So yes, I understand the bracelet has already been tainted somewhat prior to this. It's not like the bracelet's reputation was pristine prior to this incident. However, this was the most brazen and most embarrassing example of a bracelet being awarded to the person who should not have won. And this was done right on stream. And this one was actually dumped. This one actually went to the person who was just about to be out. And it was intentionally given to him from that point. And that's a lot different than someone winning a bracelet playing online under somebody else's name. This really was just giving away a bracelet to somebody else for an incentive that comes in other forms. So it's really tainted the bracelet worse than anything I've seen prior to this. So aside from calling this out, which a lot of people did on X until pretty much everyone was in agreement, yeah, this was obviously bullshit and obviously was chip dumping. So there wasn't any controversy there as to what really happened. But there was a lot of controversy and a lot of disagreement regarding whether or not this was a big deal and whether or not this mattered at all. Matt Berkey was in the camp that this didn't matter at all. He tweeted, "You guys have to all be joking, right? Who exactly do you think is being harmed by two longtime friends extracting $1 million extra in promo money by simply cooperating in a high-stakes game of split or steal?" And then someone named Robbie agreed with him and said, "I'm confused what the problem is. Like, why wouldn't you make a deal to split an extra $1 million? Anyone with a brain would have done the same thing." Patrick Leonard, who's usually pretty reasonable on X, he tweeted, "Please stop talking about the integrity. The tournament was over. Deals happen all the time. Not a single participant was affected at all. The WPT promotion has nothing to do with this tournament, and again, no players at all were affected there too. This is ironically probably the dream outcome for the WPT. Please stop associating this either anything to do with the integrity of the tournament. If this were a WSOP promotion, completely different story." Then someone said, "Very surprised this is your take. Basically, if the big corporation got screwed by the deal, it's okay." That person said sarcastically. And Patrick Leonard said back, "Firstly, the big corporation did this to interfere with their rival's brand and image and do multiple things such as show on the biggest stage some of the archaic rules. They offered a promotion that would cause drama. Secondly, this does not hurt WPT, it helps. It strengthens their brand. They wanted this and it hurts their competitors badly." Well, okay. I agree with the second tweet by Patrick Leonard, the one I just read you, that WPT probably wanted this. I don't agree with the first tweet. And there were a lot of things that were said like the first tweet and like Berkey's tweet. In fact, that was much more the default position by longtime members of the community and poker pros especially. And basically their position was this was a victimless situation, that the only ones who ended up paying extra was Club WPT. They seem happy about it. So what's the problem? Let these guys have their extra money. Club WPT, the ones paying the money, seems to be happy with the situation. So who got hurt? Looks like everybody made off better from the whole thing, except the WSOP. And screw them because, well, they weren't allowing deals at any point with anyone. So this basically exposed the problem with not allowing deal making. So that's a win for the players too, because maybe this is going to force WSOP to look at that situation again and maybe start allowing deals in the future so they don't have to have things like this occur. That's the argument that a lot of people were putting out. And then a lot of other people were saying anyone would do this. Anyone who wouldn't do this is stupid. And if you say you wouldn't do it, you're lying. This is very standard. This is what all the old school poker pros would have done too. And as far as the bracelet's concerned, hey, the bracelet was tainted a long time ago, so that's a dumb argument. That's what they're all basically saying. And that deals happen all the time. This is just the way they had to accomplish it because no deals are allowed. Mr. Tickle, who's a listener to this show and forum poster, he said, "I have two perspectives on this." He posted this on Poker Fraud Alert. "They were absolutely right to do it," referring to the players. "That's exactly what the old school poker hustlers would have done and what most poker players would have probably done. Who really cares if Club WPTGold got burned for $1 million? We all play this game for a reason," meaning money. Number two, that said, it's a pretty bad look for the World Series of Poker in the eyes of the general public. All things considered, though, it's not that big of a deal. Good on them. Sloppy Joe said that Berkey was right. He said players who wouldn't do this for the money are stupid. Who gives a shit about a fucking bracelet? These guys should be celebrated. So that was the sentiment from a lot of people, not just on Poker Fraud Alert, but poker pros all over the place were saying these guys did the right thing for themselves, and that especially if WPT's not bothered by the whole thing, then we should just be happy they were able to game the system and get an extra $1 million out of it combined. And no one got hurt from it, so don't get your panties in a bunch about the whole situation. That's what a lot of them are saying. Well, I don't agree. I don't agree for several reasons. And you might think, oh, Druff, you're just being a stickler for rules. Lighten up. Let these guys have their $1 million. Come on, you'd have done the same thing. Come on, who got hurt here? I bet that's what you're thinking right now. But I'm going to try to make the case for why this is not a good thing for poker. Now, before I do that, I want to read you the WSOP statement, because the WSOP deleted their congratulatory tweets toward the first and second place finishers. They deleted those pretty quickly. And then they had nothing to say about it until the next day. The next day being June 26th. On June 26th, this is what they wrote. Last night, we were made aware of a potential breach of the official WSOP tournament rules during heads-up play in Event 53. An investigation is underway. At this time, first and second place have not been confirmed, and neither the prize money nor the bracelet have been officially awarded. Well, this got people really riled up. Everyone had something to say about this statement, and most of it was not good. People were very angry that WSOP was talking about the possibility that the players might not get paid. Yeah. What if the WSOP disqualifies them both, doesn't pay them, doesn't give anyone the bracelet? What if they do that? People were furious. And then they started asking, hey, if you do that, what happens to the money? Do you give it to everybody else? And if you do, that's not fair, because these guys rightfully made at least second place. So how could you possibly do this? This was victimless. If you do this, you're going to really, really taint your brand. You're going to really have a riot on your hands. Like, people were really furious about this statement. Even though WSOP had not stated what they were going to do, they're just saying they're investigating. Everyone freaked out. And when I say everyone, I don't mean 100%, but a high percentage of people freaked out and bashed the WSOP in response to this tweet. Now, I agree it wasn't the best tweet. What they should have said was, the beginning was fine about how they were made aware of a potential rule violation and they want to look into it. They should say that they need to examine the entire final table, first of all, to make sure that this was only limited to the heads-up play, because if it wasn't and it involved collusion prior to that, it becomes a much more serious matter. And they could have written this in a more business-like fashion than what I'm saying here. I'm just spouting off from the top of my head. And if it does turn out it just seemed to have occurred during the heads-up portion, then they're going to determine what is a fair way to handle this both now and going forward. And yeah, they would have gotten some hate too, but a lot better than this tweet basically implying that disqualifying these guys and taking away the money is on the table. So WPT was loving this. Club WPT was really loving watching WSOP just get pounded on social media over this. First, this happens at their tournament. Their tournament gets disrupted, and basically a mockery is made of the bracelet, of the tournament, by this $1 million being inserted. But second, they botched their social media response. First by congratulating the supposed winner, and then deleting the tweet and then replacing it with this that's implying they're not going to get paid, possibly. And everyone gets very mad. But I didn't get mad. They do have to investigate. They definitely have to make sure that there was no collusion prior to the heads-up portion of the match. Because if there was, that's an entirely different story. And then these guys should be disqualified. And they shouldn't be paid. And in fact, they should be banned if that were the case. Now, I don't think it was the case. In fact, no one really thinks it's the case. There's been some people saying, well, what if? But nobody has shown a single hand that was fishy prior to the heads-up match. So I think this was decided when they were in the hallway during that break prior to being heads-up. I think up to the point when the third-place guy busted, everything was fine. That's what I think. I strongly believe that. But they do have to look and make sure. They do have to do that. So you can't fault the WSOP for holding up the money while they make sure that there was no actual victim here. Once they get past that and determine that there wasn't an actual victim, then they have to think what is the right thing to do. And I know you might be thinking, well, then, if there's no victim, the right thing to do is pay them and award the bracelet, let WPT do what they're going to do, and be done. But no, that's not the right solution. This is what I wrote. Easy. Pay the two guys, award no bracelet. Nobody in the field was cheated, but there was no actual champion. Let Club WPT Gold do what they want regarding the million. And that was my statement. Pay the money, let WPT do what they want, but give no bracelet. Hold the bracelet back. Why? As I said in the tweet, there was no actual champion. Because to award a champion, there needs to be a legitimate heads-up match where someone wins and someone loses. Not a rigged heads-up match where they were super careful to make sure that the person they wanted to win would win. Where they colluded together to make sure that Yaganuma would win. That is not a heads-up match. That is chip dumping. That is heads-up collusion. So there was no champion. You basically have 2 second-place finishers here, at least as far as the championship is concerned, because there really is no champion. Now you might say, well, wait a minute. Why does this really matter? Why not just award the bracelet? Well, let's think about it. What is a bracelet? Why are you going for a bracelet? Why do people want a bracelet? What does a bracelet mean? When you go for a bracelet there, when you're playing a World Series event, you hope to win a bracelet. And let's put the money out of it. Yeah, of course, the money's very nice. But you can win a lot of money in a lot of different types of events, not just World Series events. So what is special about the bracelet? Is it the bracelet itself? Is it that it has gold and diamonds on it? No. I mean, yes, it could be sold in a pawn shop or on eBay for several $1,000s, but that's not why you want it, to have the actual physical value of the jewelry. And it's not just to have a piece of jewelry. It's because the bracelet represents a title. It represents a championship title that you have won. So when they talk about how many bracelets someone has, they don't talk about Phil Hellmuth wearing 18 bracelets on his arm, which of course he doesn't do. The bracelet is basically a trophy that you have won a title. And you should not award a trophy when a title was not actually won. And Jesse Yaganuma did not actually win a title. A title was dumped to him when he was highly likely to finish second. So you can't give it to him, and you can't give it to James Carroll because, number one, he intentionally dumped it away, and number two, we don't know for sure if he would have won. If it played out normally, maybe Yaganuma would have come back and won. It wasn't that likely, but he could have. Whatever it is, these guys chose not to play it out normally. They chose to dump chips to make a certain outcome happen. They did not really play heads up. So for that reason, you cannot award a bracelet. And when I say you cannot, you legally can. The WSOP can do what it wants regarding the bracelet. It can award a bracelet. But then what does that mean? Does that really mean that Yaganuma has 4 bracelets now? He won 3 legitimately, but this one wasn't won legitimately. He got to second legitimately, but he didn't get to first legitimately. So does this mean that he has 4 bracelets or 3? He may physically have 4 bracelets in his possession if they award it to him, but how do you see it? Would you call him a 4-time bracelet winner? Or would you call him a 3-time bracelet winner? And you may say, who cares? Why does this matter? Well, if it doesn't matter, why do we have a bracelet at all? I'm serious. Why have a bracelet at all if it's going to be allowed? The WSOP has not awarded it yet. They're deciding what to do. If they choose to award it here, then what they're doing is sending a message that anyone who wants to dump chips to someone who wants a bracelet and is willing to pay for it in some way, then that's okay. Now, here they weren't doing it to give a 4th bracelet to Yaganuma. They were doing it for the extra money. But regardless of the reason, there are people out there that don't have a bracelet yet that really want one and that are willing to pay a lot of money if they get heads up for a bracelet and get people to dump to them so they can guarantee to win it. So should we start just allowing that? Should the World Series just say, okay, if you get heads up, you want to dump a bracelet? Cool. Do it. It's not hurting anyone. Just dump the bracelet. Then why have a bracelet? Seriously. What does the bracelet mean if it can be bought or dumped like that? And people can be awarded a title that they didn't really earn. And that's a lot different than small online events that really aren't bracelet worthy, but nevertheless run honestly, or even online events that run dishonestly, but but that the WSOP doesn't know about and just goes on behind their back. It's one thing if players cheat and the WSOP has no way to prove it or even be aware of it. Well, that sucks, but you can't blame the WSOP fully because it's not like they're just letting it happen. But when they know it happened, when they know that a bracelet went to someone who wasn't supposed to get it, when they know a bracelet was actually dumped, and then they award it anyway, that sets a precedent. It really does. It sets a precedent that we don't care. You can buy titles here. You can bribe your way into titles. You don't have to win heads up. You can just pay the other guy enough to give it to you. And that makes the whole title meaningless. Then you shouldn't have bracelets. You should not have any kind of championship title. You should not have a player of the year system. You should not have fantasy betting, which the World Series doesn't directly run, but a lot of people like participating in. There's even a 25K league, 25K buy-in league, where people play this for high stakes. So you can't have fantasy either if this is allowed. So if this is really just going to be a cold pursuit of cash, then you should operate these like a cash game, where it's a tournament, but you don't keep records, you don't give titles, you don't talk about people winning such and such number of bracelets, you don't have player of the year rankings, nothing. Think of the way cash games work. There's no cash game player of the year. There's no cash game bracelet. In fact, there's some people who absolutely crush cash games that are basically unknown. In fact, I know some of them. People you'd never recognize that win a lot of money playing poker. And I don't even just mean at the private games. Because there's no glory in winning cash games, unless you're doing it on one of these streamed games. So if you're playing in a non-streamed cash game and win a lot of money, hardly anyone's going to know about it. And you won't get any glory. That's the way cash games have always been. And tournaments, especially in the last 20 plus years, have been the flashy way to play poker, where your accomplishments are put up on a big stage and where you get titles for winning. But there's no point to have any of that if the titles are phony. So I don't want to hear, oh, this doesn't matter. Well, if it doesn't matter, then we shouldn't have any of this stuff. There's no point to have it if there's going to be blatant allowance of cheating to get there. And I don't mean cheating other people. I mean cheating the system. I mean being awarded a title you don't deserve. And there's a lot of people on X who just like to look down on the bracelet because it makes them feel rebellious and cool. It makes them feel dorky to say, oh, bracelets, yeah, I want a bracelet so bad. I really want a bracelet. A bracelet is so cool. Like, that's kind of dorky to say on social media. So it's much more rebellious to say, man, bracelets don't matter. Who gives a crap? It's the money that matters. We play for the money. It's all about the money. It's all about the Benjamins. Screw the bracelet. Who cares about the fucking bracelet? That's lame. Well, okay, if who cares about the bracelet, then don't award one. Not just here, like ever. Like, just do away with it. Why give one? What does it mean? It really means nothing if the WSOP is going to actually say, sure, have a bracelet here even though we know it was dumped to you. It was right there on stream. We saw it. We know it. But here's your bracelet anyway, fake winner. And by the way, now anybody else who wants to do this can do it as well. So they can't send that message. They cannot award that bracelet. If they do, it's a big mistake. But it also would not be right to take the money from these guys. Number one, they got to second place fairly. And number two, nobody was cheated. So since both of them were involved in this, they were both equally culpable. And since there was no other victim, then where should the money go? Shouldn't go to the WSOP. Shouldn't go to the other finishers. They weren't cheated in any way. WPT, that's their own thing. In fact, they probably are happy about this. So where should the money go if not to these two guys? So sure, let them have the prize money they won, whether through chip dumping or not chip dumping. Let them have their little deal. But don't award a bracelet and don't consider Yaganuma a 4-time bracelet winner. Just simply do not have a title for that particular event this year. Just no actual posted winner for event 53. In fact, you could even list it as second and second with no first place finisher. That's what they should do. And that really solves everything. It shuts up the people who are outraged about how these guys may not get paid, because they should get paid. These guys still get every penny that they were trying to get. They get the $1 million presumably from ClubWPTGold. They get the cash that they believe they would get from the WSOP. So they are not short anything. And at the same time, the bracelet is not tainted any further by giving one out. So if you're one of these people who's saying the bracelet doesn't matter, who cares? Well, if it doesn't matter, then why should they give it out? If it really doesn't matter, then don't hand it out. It shouldn't bother you that they don't get a bracelet if the bracelet doesn't matter. And by the way, if you're one of those people saying a bracelet doesn't matter, I don't want to hear from you ever again about your own excitement about playing for a bracelet. If you say the bracelet doesn't matter, I don't want to see tweets from you, hey, four-handed for a bracelet, bracelet hunting. I don't want to hear that from you then. Because you just said it didn't matter. You just said, yeah, give it to these guys. You just said the bracelet's irrelevant here. That's not why we play. Okay, if that's your opinion, that someone who didn't really win the bracelet should be awarded one, even though it happened right under all of our noses, right where we could all see. If you think that person should get a bracelet, then okay. But if you think the bracelet doesn't matter to where it can be tainted like that, then you don't deserve one. You should not be chasing one. You should not care about one. In fact, if you're one of those people, you should be happier getting 2 second places that add up to more money than 1 first place. So let's say you could win 2 second places for $200K each. I'm just saying hypothetically, or a single event for $350K. That you should prefer the 2 second places. And if you don't, you're a hypocrite. Because a lot of the people who were saying that they should get the bracelet are people who have bracelets and people who get very excited when they win bracelets. In fact, I've seen some people who were players of the year supporting this guy getting the bracelet. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So look, it's got to be one way or the other. Either you say these titles don't matter, the bracelet doesn't matter, player of the year doesn't matter, fantasy points don't matter, all this stuff doesn't matter, we're playing for the cash, all this stuff's irrelevant and stupid. Okay, fine. You can say that, but then you have to treat the other stuff like it's stupid forever. It's stupid when you win a bracelet then. It's stupid when your friends are going for a bracelet. It's stupid when you have multiple bracelets, or when you've had a great World Series and you might be player of the year because of the bracelet you won. If it's stupid about this to deny it, it's stupid when you win bracelets. It's stupid when you're proud of winning bracelets. It's stupid when the bracelet means something to you. You can't have the bracelet mean something to you, but also cheer for someone getting awarded a bracelet they don't deserve. You just cannot have that. It's got to be one or the other. Because the bracelet's symbolic. So either you appreciate the symbolism, as I still do, or if you don't, then you shouldn't be chasing one. But there's so much hypocrisy. But I think people just want to look cool. They want to cheer the fighting of the power against the WSOP. And that brings me to my next point. A lot of people see this as appropriate comeuppance for the World Series of Poker because they do not allow deals. Now, I don't know how strict they are about under-the-table deals. I don't think that's strict. I can tell you 20 years ago, I heard a speech twice when I made 2 different final tables. I heard a speech twice that they are not facilitating any deals, but that if you want to make one behind the scenes, they have no problem with it. Of course, that was 20 years ago. I haven't heard this speech since then, including more recent final tables I've made. But I also haven't heard that deals are expressly forbidden and that you'll get in some kind of trouble if you make one. They just won't do it. If you say, I want to make deals, they'll say, oh, no, we don't do that here. But I think if it's found out you secretly did one behind the scenes, and if no collusion was involved, like let's say heads up, you make a deal with the other guy, hey, how about we just really play for $100K here and the rest we chop up in such and such fashion, and the World Series finds out about it, they're not going to do anything about it. I think that was their position. But bottom line is there is no official deal making you can make at any World Series final table. So a lot of people felt that this was comeuppance for the World Series for not allowing this. And This leads me to criticize another take I'm seeing over and over and over again on X about this, and it's just frustrating me to read, especially because it's coming from a lot of smart people. And that take is, if only the World Series allowed deal making, then this couldn't and wouldn't have happened. That this was a result of them not allowing deal making. They deserved this, people said. No, incorrect. I'll tell you why it's incorrect. This was not a situation where two players wanted to make a deal and not play for a ton of money heads up and have all the variance associated with that, and then had to make a secret deal and then the whole thing looked bad. It wasn't that situation. It wasn't that they just wanted the tournament to end and they've already made their deal, so just one dumped to the other to end it. That's not what happened here. What happened here was a third party added another $1 million to the pool when all they were playing for heads up was $200K, because once they both got to second place minimum, once it was heads up, they both had $1 million locked in. It was only that last $250K or so that they were really playing for. So the $1 million was 4 times what they were playing for, more than 4 times. So that put a tremendous incentive for them to rig the match to fall in that particular way. That's what happened there. So this has nothing to do with deals. So let's say hypothetically the World Series not only allowed deals, but actually facilitated them, which, by the way, some tournament series do. Some tournament series, you can go to them and say, hey, we've made a deal, adjust the payouts accordingly. Now we're going to play for much less money heads up. So we're still going to finish off the match, but it's going to be for much less money. We've adjusted the payouts the way they're going to be, and second place is going to get more, first place is going to get less. We're going to play for this remaining amount of money, and we're going to finish it out. That's one way deals happen. Another way deals can happen is where the tournament just stops, where they don't ever finish it, and just the person with the most chips is declared the winner. So I've seen these with 7 people left. I've seen them occasionally with like 15 people left, and in fact, there was an embarrassing situation at a Win Ladies event where there was, I believe, something like 15 people left, and they all agreed to just end it there. Yeah, those deals will happen, but the one who gets the title is almost always the person who has the most chips at the time. The chip leader at the time the deal is made is considered the winner. In fact, I actually had one of these. I won a tournament at Commerce a number of years ago, a no-limit hold'em tournament. I was the chip leader, and it was proposed, hey, let's just quit this three-handed, and I'll be the winner because I had the most chips, and I'd be giving up some first-place money to the other 2 guys for quitting. And I said, okay, sure, because there's a lot of variance at that point. The blinds are very high, and the structure isn't very good in these tournaments, so yeah, let's just do it. So I did it. So I was officially the winner. I didn't actually bust everybody. There was 3 of us left, but I did have the most chips. And I got the most money. I didn't get first place money, but I got the most of the 3 of us. And I was declared the winner, and that's totally fine, totally kosher. That happens all the time. But I'll tell you what doesn't happen. I'll tell you what would never be allowed to happen at the World Series. And I'll tell you what isn't allowed at other major events, to my knowledge. That is where someone who doesn't have all the chips gets to be declared the winner when play stops. There's been some incidents over time where that's been allowed, but the last time this happened at a major tournament was 9 years ago at the EPT, where William Gassouf, of all people, wanted a title so badly that he basically bought the title and received less money as, quote, the winner than the second place guy who had more chips than him. So they quit heads up with the other guy leading, but Gassouf was declared the winner, which, shame on the EPT for that 9 years ago. But it wasn't very well publicized then. It was, in fact, just brought to my attention today. But that's the only one I know of at any major tournament in the last, 25 years where this has happened. It's happened many times that a tournament ends where the one who's winning but hasn't yet won every chip on the table is declared the winner. But never where a person who's in second or worse than second is awarded the title when play stops for good. And I can tell you the WSOP would never, ever, ever allow this, because if they were to allow that, then that totally throws the value of the bracelet out the window. The main allure of the World Series of Poker to both pros and recreational players is the bracelet. It is the biggest series. The bracelet is the most prestigious trophy to have. And if they turn it into a situation where deals can be made that someone who is not the chip leader can just be awarded the bracelet and they can just stop play right then, that basically just says you can buy a bracelet if you want, if you get down to the last few people. If you have enough money, you can just bribe your way into a bracelet. We'll just stop play for you and facilitate it. There is no way, there is no possible way the World Series of Poker would ever do that, and they shouldn't do it. It pisses me off to see these things. Why should you ever give a title to somebody who ends a tournament without the most chips? If you are done with the tournament, if you're just quitting the tournament, everybody quits and says we're done, the title should go to the person with the most chips. Never, never, never should it be otherwise. Otherwise, why have a title? Now, again, if you're only playing for money, then do what you want. If there's no title involved, and it's just a tournament strictly for cash, and for some reason some guy just wants to say he was first, and he's willing to take less money to be crowned first, then fine. But once you're awarding a title of some sort, a World Series bracelet, a World Series ring, a WPT title, an EPT title, I don't care what kind of title it is, any kind of title, even a minor title, any kind of title awarded should not go to somebody who does not have the most chips when play stops. Period. There's no way around that. Otherwise, it's awarding a false title. Can you imagine in baseball, let's say the Dodgers make the World Series again, and let's say they end up against a low-budget team like the Tampa Bay Rays, and the Dodgers are down 3-2 in the series, and they're afraid they're not going to win. So they have to win 2 in a row to win the World Series at that point. And they say to the Rays, you know what, you guys don't have very much money, and we do. So how about we just ship $100 million to you guys, and we just stop playing, and you declare us the World Series champion? How do you think that would go over in baseball? If just because the Dodgers have more money, that they could just hand $100 million, $200 million, whatever it would take, to the Rays to just declare the Dodgers the winner of the World Series? Or alternatively, for them to throw the games so the Dodgers would win both of them. And we had a similar situation to this back in the 1910s. Of course, nobody remembers that who's alive today. But they had something like this. Not quite like this because it had to do with gambling. But the point is, there have been situations where the World Series has been thrown before. But I'm saying, like, imagine if it was actually just bought. Imagine if one team just bought it over the other. Just said, hey, we have more money than you. We're just going to buy the title, okay? And the other team says, oh, cool, yeah, we need the money, thanks. How do you think the fans would feel? That would be a gigantic scandal. Even if there's, quote, no victims here. If both teams agree, if it's put out in the open, that still would be really shitty. Because winning the Baseball World Series, that gives you a title. That gives you a World Series championship. And you can't have a World Series championship without actually winning the championship. So nobody should ever be awarded a title in any competition if they don't actually win it. And if you're going to end a competition early, the title should always go to the one who is ahead at the moment. Never someone who's in second or worse than second place. Ever. There's never an excuse for this. And if you say, well, it doesn't matter, then you shouldn't have titles in the first place. Then it should be strictly for money and nothing else. So this deal-making crap, while I agree the World Series should facilitate deals, they should never facilitate deals which would include awarding a false winner. Never. They never should. They never will. So all the people blaming this on the lack of deals, they don't know what they're talking about. Because if the World Series allowed the deals that other series do allow, that would not have changed this one bit. Because in order to get the extra $1 million, Yaganuma had to actually win. And the only way he could win would be either to win all the chips, or if deal making is allowed, to have more chips than his opponent when play were to stop. And he came in with a 9-1 chip deficit. So he'd have to get there somehow. And the only way to get there somehow, without risking that he doesn't get there, is to do what they did with this super blatant chip dumping. So the deal making is not part of this. You want to change that rule? Fine, I'm behind that. But that has nothing to do with this. But it's just a way for people to bash the WSOP. And there's some kind of weird resentment a lot of people have towards the WSOP, where they will rearrange their entire lives and schedules and spend a lot of money to play it and travel from a long way to play it. But then they take every opportunity they can to bash the WSOP and take delight in situations like these. And you guys know me. If I see something that's worthy of criticism of the WSOP, I say it. And in fact, the WSOP hasn't always been happy with me for saying things that are critical. But you know what? Other times I will defend them. And this time, I'm doing both. They screwed up big time by not stopping this match and warning the two players to stop this crap. But at the same time, this has nothing to do with their deal-making rule. And anyone saying that's what caused it, or it's their fault for this, anyone who says that is an idiot. Even if the person is otherwise intelligent and otherwise has very reasonable and good takes, typically on X. But I could not believe how many smart people were saying, well, this is what they get for not allowing deals. No. Think about it. If they allowed deals, how would it be any different? It would not be. I actually saw some people saying, no. We're actually saying deals should be allowed where, yes, you can declare yourself the winner even without the most chips. And I'm just like, oh, you my gosh. Why? Why have a bracelet then? What does a bracelet even mean then? Well, it means nothing. Okay, well then don't ever play for one. Seriously. If it really means nothing, not only shouldn't you play for one, but if you really want to play these events just to win the cash in the events, let's say you think you're a good player and you think the field is soft compared to you and you just want to win the big money, okay, then you should sell the bracelet as soon as you win it. If it really means nothing, then if you win a bracelet, you should put it up on eBay and sell it. Get the money for it. You'll get decent money. But these people won't. They'll be proud of their bracelets. It's also interesting who commented on this. A person commented on this that was it's pretty amusing. Remember Mark Seif? He's still playing, by the way. Mark Seif. Seif. He was the lead absolute poker pro in the 2000s. And when the whole super user scandal happened with Absolute Poker, of which I was a victim, in fact, I was the first person to call it out. When that scandal happened, Mark Seif was defending them. In fact, when Absolute Poker stupidly released a full hand history to one of the victims, Marco Johnson, and then Nat Aram, who was investigating the scandal, actually put together, from the spreadsheet that was sent to Marco Johnson, he put together a little YouTube video demonstrating all the cards in the tournament and showing the way that this account Pot Ripper that was cheating was playing and how blatant and obvious it was. And you could just watch it on this video that Nat Aram made. Couldn't have been more clear. The only person in the poker world to say that it wasn't obvious cheating by Pot Ripper was Mark Seif. And of course, that's because he was super biased. He was the lead pro there, and it's always been suspected that he owned some percentage of Absolute Poker, that was part of the deal he had with them. Maybe he even invested. I don't know how he got hooked up with them, but whatever it was, he had the nerve to say that he wasn't convinced Pot Ripper was cheating. He doesn't really see anything wrong there. And it's not he's a dumb guy. He's not a dumb guy. He's actually an attorney. So somehow he could pass the bar, but he couldn't watch this Pot Ripper replay and determine there was cheating when every other person in the poker world could see it and see it very blatantly. So that was Mark Seif. And he and I went back and forth about this and other stuff related to Absolute Poker in 2007. And some of you might remember that if you were around back then. So this is what Mark Seif had to say about this, about the situation here with the Millionaire Maker. This is deplorable outright cheating via collusion. It's yet another terrible look for poker. They should forfeit the prize money for the top two spots and have it evenly distributed to all players that entered. Obviously, no bracelet should be awarded, and lifetime bans are in order. Oh my gosh. Now, he deleted that tweet because he got the predictable response from people who remembered his history. So the guy who is defending the absolute poker cheating and saying that he's not seeing anything wrong with Pot Ripper's play, the guy who is the lead pro on absolute poker, defending the blatant cheating that was going on there multiple times, he's claiming that this Millionaire Maker thing is a terrible look for poker and it's deplorable and that they should be banned for life. Well, with that standard, I think Mark Seif should be banned for life because he was not only supportive of blatant cheating that occurred that really was a deplorable stain on poker, a terrible look back in 2007, but he also was the lead pro of that site and possibly a partial owner. And he's putting that type of stuff out there back then. So if these two should be banned for this little stunt they pulled to get an extra $1 million, then definitely Mark Seif should be banned from all tournaments for what he did back in 2007. So of all people to comment on this. So obviously people came down on him pretty hard and he deleted the tweet pretty fast. But I have a copy of it and I tweeted it out. You can look at my Twitter, at Todd Wittelis. You can see I tweeted the screenshot of it for posterity. I could not believe he posted that. It's like he just wants to forget. It's like he's just pretending that wasn't him. Like a different guy, different life. Oh, it was 18 years ago. Yeah, I was supporting the Pot Ripper cheating and making excuses for a site that was ripping off tens of millions of dollars from the players, and I might have been a partial owner there, but that was then. This is now. It's 2025. It's deplorable to dump heads up in a tournament. It's fine to cheat people for a long time on an online poker site and steal tens of millions of dollars. That's fine, but deplorable to do this. Unbelievable. Now, there was some discussion about a possible Nevada gaming violation. And is it possible that there could be not only a Nevada gaming investigation, but could these two guys be arrested and charged? Well, I won't say there's a 0% chance of that, because there is technically a chance of that. This could be seen as a gaming violation because there was actual collusion here, even though the collusion was not against any individual. And even though WPT, which could be seen as the only victim here, they are okay with it, and they definitely won't make a complaint. So how could Nevada Gaming investigate this? Well, because this still could be seen as collusion in a poker tournament, and it still could technically be against the law. I'm not sure if it would be or not, but I could see where it could be framed that way and it wouldn't be completely outrageous. However, it's very unlikely that such an investigation is going to occur because this was victimless, aside from WPT, who doesn't consider themselves a victim. So I don't see an investigation happening, even if someone makes a complaint. Anyone complaining is not going to be a direct victim of this. So what gaming is going to say is, okay, but what do you have to do with this? How are you harmed? And even if they look into this, I just don't see where they're going to determine an egregious enough violation to where they would ever go after these two individuals. Now, could they possibly fine the World Series of Poker for not stopping this and for allowing this to occur? It's possible. I think if there were to be any gaming issue here, it would be more likely that the World Series of Poker could get fined or warned rather than the players themselves getting in any kind of trouble. So I really don't think gaming is going to get involved. But if they do, I think it'll be from the regulatory angle, not from a criminal investigation angle. And anyone saying otherwise doesn't really understand the way it all works. You also have to know that the Nevada Gaming Commission just does not understand poker very well. So they make a lot of dumb and weird rulings involving poker, especially online poker, but even brick and mortar poker, which of course has been around in Nevada for decades. They still don't completely understand it, especially newer concepts like guarantees and other things like that they should be enforcing. And not only don't they have no interest in making a rule about some of these shady things that these casinos do, like removing guarantees, as I said. So they don't understand poker very well and don't seem to want to understand it well. And this is going to be very confusing to them because gaming, if a complaint's made to them, they'll ask, okay, well then who got cheated? Was it you? Well, no. Okay, who was it? Can we talk to them? Well, really, it wasn't an individual. It was ClubWPTGold, which is an online site, and they claim they're legally operating, but they're really, they really might not be. And they sort of got cheated by $1 million, but they consider themselves not cheated because they got more than $1 million of publicity out of this, and their competitor looked stupid, so they're actually happy about it. To them, it was worth it. So I think they got cheated, you can say, but they don't think they got cheated. Like the gaming investigators are going to say, what the hell are you talking about? So wait, did anyone get cheated or not? Like, if WPT's okay with it, and if no players lost money because of it, where's the crime? Because they're going to have a hard time understanding it. They really will. They might say, how can there be collusion? Heads up. We don't understand. So I really don't see that happening. But if they do somehow understand it, then it would more be some kind of fine or warning towards the World Series of Poker. So I wouldn't focus too much on that, and I wouldn't hold your breath waiting for a gaming investigation on this. It probably will not happen. Do I have any knowledge of a gaming complaint having been made? No. Would I ever consider making a complaint about this? No. This is not worthy of such a thing. I don't believe there should be a gaming investigation. There could possibly be one, but I don't think there should be one. As I said, this can be solved by paying the guys and then awarding no bracelet and awarding no title, no bracelet ceremony, no saying that Yaganuma has 4 bracelets, listing them both in second place, and that's it. Be done, walk away, move on. But you can't move on because there's the future to think about. What does the World Series of Poker do in the future? Not just about if a third party is awarding extra money, but also just if someone wants to dump to the other for any reason. Let's say you have a very rich guy who's heads up but is at a big deficit and he's against a good pro. And he says, okay, well, I was lucky to get this far. I'm a recreational player. I've made second place minimum here, but I don't think I can beat you. Number one, you're better than me. And number two, you have way more chips than me. So how about you dump this to me and I'll make it worth your while? And maybe the pro will say yes. So what should the WSOP do in the case that this is offered and it's clear it's happening? If they don't know what's happening and it's not obvious, then there's nothing they can do. But let's say it's like this, where it's obvious. Let's even say it's on a stream like this, where we can see it and there's video evidence of every hand. What should and can be done? Well, as I said, all they have to do is stop the match and warn the players. And if they really want, they can clarify the rule to what collusion actually means. Because there's been a debate on X. Well, they don't state what collusion really is, and collusion really has to involve a third party at minimum. And if it doesn't, it's not collusion, some people say. Well, I don't agree with that, but I will admit that the rules are a little bit ambiguous as far as that is concerned. So yeah, they can write in a new rule, and in fact, they can do it mid-series. They don't have to write the rules before each series. They can write a rule that's new, mid-series, that states that anyone who is chip dumping or doing anything in order to intentionally cause one person to win the bracelet in a heads-up match will be disqualified. That both players will be disqualified if they collude together to push the bracelet to one person. And write that in legal language, which makes it very clear what they mean and what constitutes collusion. I've seen the question of how do you prove it? I've seen it where they say, well, how do you know? How can we be sure? What if there's just a fluke here that Carroll just choked, that he just played really, really, really badly and is so embarrassed he's willing to let the narrative be that he was chip dumping. But he was just choking. He was just tired or just nervous or whatever it was, and played awful, gave off a lot of tells, didn't know he was doing it, and just lost. How do you prove that he wasn't just playing badly? It's not illegal to play badly. It's not illegal to go on tilt. It's not illegal to play in a manner where you're unlikely to win. So how do they prove what's in people's heads? Well, it can be difficult, but like any matter in court, it's where you collect evidence, even if circumstantial. It's where you consult experts. It's where you have experts testify. And it's where a decision is rendered, whether it's by a court or by the Nevada Gaming Commission or whatever other official entity would be adjudicating this. You don't have to have a smoking gun. And in fact, it's not necessarily beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt is the standard to get a criminal conviction. Juries are instructed in criminal trials to only convict the person if they're so sure that the accused is guilty that is beyond a reasonable doubt. That means you have to be very sure. Not 100% sure, but like 90-something percent sure. That's what beyond a reasonable doubt means. But in a civil case, the standard is called preponderance of the evidence. And that is a much lower standard. That basically means you're 50.01% sure that one side is right over the other. That's all you have to be, is 50.01% sure that the side you're ruling for is correct. That's all you need in a civil case. So the same thing could be held true in the case of disqualifications where they don't pay somebody. Even if the World Series gets sued, this would be decided upon the preponderance of the evidence, not beyond a reasonable doubt, because this would not be a criminal case. So whether it would be a gaming commission ruling or something in civil court, it would be the same thing. So this would not be difficult to get more than 50% certainty that jumping was happening, collusion was happening, unless it was done very well to where there's some doubt there. But in a situation like this, provided that whoever is ruling on it understands it, they would easily believe it is more than 50% likely that this was happening. And that's all you need. And the truth is, this is the type of thing that people will only do if they think they can get away with it. So if you put in the deterrence, you put a rule in that specifically states this is prohibited, and if someone tries it, you bring it up to them and warn them and say, you can't do it. Look at the rule here. You try this crap, we're going to disqualify you. You won't get your money. You won't get your bracelet. Believe me, they would stop. They would not just say, well, F you, we're doing it anyway. You can't prove it. No one's going to say that. To a large degree, when you're in a tournament, you're at the mercy of the tournament operator. It is very hard to fight rulings from the tournament operator. There's certain things you can fight. Like, let's say I'm in the middle of the World Series main event. And let's say I'm very close to the money, very close to cashing in the World Series main at the beginning of day 4. And then someone from Caesars comes up to me and says, hey, Todd, we're banning you. We don't like you. We're sick of your shenanigans. We don't like your radio show that criticizes us sometimes. So we are banning you from Caesars Properties, Todd. So get up and leave. And I say, no, I'm not getting up and leaving. I'm about to cash in the main event here. At minimum, I'm going to get 5 figures from this. And, if I get lucky, I can win as much as $10 million. So no, I can't leave at this point. I would actually have a very strong case to have gaming called down there and have them be told that they have to let me complete the event before banning me. And there's plenty of precedent for this. In fact, this is exactly what happened to Eden Rocks last year. Now, Eden Rocks was, actually I think it was 23. It was 2 years ago. But whatever. Eden Rocks was banned from Caesars, but he was in the middle of the tag team event. So they actually let him finish off the tag team event before banning him. And that was for a reason, because when you're in the middle of placing a bet, for the most part, they can't ban you unless you're causing some kind of immediate issue where they have to get rid of you. So if you're in the middle of placing a bet and then you start choking the dealer, yeah, they can ban you at that point. But if it's over something you did that is not creating an immediate issue, an immediate major issue, and they're just not wanting you there anymore, they have to let you complete your bet, and a tournament is considered one bet. So that has to play out before they can get rid of you. They have to let it play out. They have to pay you if you want anything. Then they can ban you. So why am I bringing this up? What I'm saying here is that while you can have a right to finish off a tournament if you're in the process of being banned for something unrelated to it, you do not have that right if you've done something in the tournament that breaks the rules and they're disqualifying you for that reason. So if they warn the players and say, hey, we're not going to do anything now, but you better stop or the hammer's going to come down, I would think 100% of the players doing this would stop. That would be the end. So sometimes all you need is a deterrent. So that's one way they can easily solve this for the future. They cannot solve the past completely because this has already happened. But at least they can just not give the bracelet and otherwise pay the guys. That's the easiest and best solution. There's been some discussion, maybe the guys will get banned for good from the World Series. Maybe they will be banned for the rest of the series. I mean, maybe. I can't tell you for sure. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. It could happen, but I don't think it will. Yes, there is a possibility they could be suspended the rest of the series to send a message. Yes, it's possible they could just be banned. There's been people banned for stupid reasons, so I guess this could happen. But I think they're not that stupid. I think when they look at it, they're going to figure out, okay, we've got to come up with something that looks the least bad. If we don't award the money, it's going to look awful. If we ban them, it's going to look fairly bad. If we award the bracelet, it'll look bad in a different way, that it just devalues our bracelet and just shows that people can chip dump and still be awarded a title. So really the best solution, as I keep saying, is to pay it all out normally. Don't ban anybody, but just don't give a bracelet. In fact, sometimes not awarding a title is what you need to do even if there was cheating going on. And I'm not talking about poker now. But think about the 2017 Baseball World Series, where it was revealed later on that the Houston Astros were using illegal methods to steal and then communicate signs, and their batters always knew what was coming. And that's definitely cheating. So they won the World Series over the Dodgers in 2017 by cheating. So a lot of people said, well, very simple. Award the title to the Dodgers. Disqualify the Astros and give it to the Dodgers. But there was a problem with that because the Dodgers weren't the only opponents they did this to. They also did it to the Yankees, who were their opponents in the previous round. So it wouldn't be fair to give the title to the Dodgers because had the Astros been playing fairly, they may have lost to the Yankees, who may have then gone on to beat the Dodgers in 2017. So you can't just give it to the Dodgers when they were one of multiple victims. So I said at the time the right decision for baseball to have made would have been to vacate the title for 2017, just have no World Series title for that year. But they didn't like the optics of that. They didn't want this to be remembered in history all this time about 2017 was the year with no title because of cheating. So they just decided to let the Astros keep it, and they slapped them on the wrist, which was pretty bad. I don't want to get to a whole rant about that again, but it was pretty bad. The Astros did not deserve that title. They cheated to win it. So really that year there should have been no title. Just like for this event, there should have been no title. Now you might have a question in your mind. Would I do this? Let's say I was in Yaganuma's position. Let's say I had the golden ticket. I had to win the event to get the million. I was a 9-1 chip dog coming in to heads-up play. And I had an opponent that was willing to dump chips to me, provided he gets a piece of that million. What would I do? Well, I would actually say no. And some people don't believe me. Some people think I'm just saying this because I wasn't actually in the position, and it just sounds better to say, oh, no, I would never do that. Well, I will give you my reasons. Number one, I would not want to get banned from the World Series over this. Not only would it mean I couldn't play the World Series again, but But it would also mean that I probably wouldn't get paid because I'd be disqualified and not paid. So I wouldn't want to risk the $1 million I have locked up, and I would not want to risk not being able to play the World Series again. Number 2, I would not want to throw away my reputation, my 25-year reputation in poker, as an honest player who doesn't shoot angles or pull shenanigans. People have looked to me for a long time in poker as someone who plays the game fairly and someone who they never have to suspect of cheating them or ripping them off. And I wouldn't want to throw all that away. I've spent a lot of time building up this reputation, and I wouldn't want to toss it in the garbage by doing something which isn't cheating, but, you know, in a way it kind of is to get that $1 million. And then to chip dump a bracelet off or receive chip dumps to win a false bracelet, that would really taint everything I've stood for in poker all this time. So I would not do that. Number 3, there's no guarantee ClubWPTGold would pay me. Now, sure, at this point, it looks like they're going to pay. But at the time this decision was made, that was not clear. No one knew ClubWPTGold's position on it. So I wouldn't do this also because I wouldn't know if they're going to pay me either. I could get nothing. I could get nothing from the World Series and nothing from ClubWPTGold. Number 4, you could also get stiffed by the other guy with little recourse. So let's say I was the one who was dumping off the chips. Let's say I was the one who was about to win a second bracelet, but I was approached, hey, if you let me win, then I'll give you $500K, and I'll let you have the difference in first and second place money. So I'll basically guarantee you first place money plus $500K if you just dump to me. Even if I say okay to that, what if the guy stiffs me? What would I do then? Try to go to social media and complain, hey, we were going to do this chip dumping thing and pull these shenanigans, but the guy screwed me? Everyone would laugh in my face. So you don't really have any recourse, and you wouldn't really have any legal recourse either. And number 5, another bracelet would be important to me. Now, is it worth $500K to me to get another bracelet? No. If someone asked me, well, would you rather have a second bracelet or another $500K? I would say, yeah, I'd rather have another $500K. But a second bracelet is definitely worth something. It's not trivial. So it would suck to know I'm giving up a very likely bracelet. So combined with all those other factors, they just wouldn't do it. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and judge the guys who did. I understand why they did it. I understand that in a way this could be looked at as an advantage play. That WPT was awarding this $1 million to a bracelet winner holding a ticket and didn't really state any terms that were involved in this. And while they could deny it and probably get away with it and be right in doing so if they did, you could take a shot at it, provided you trust the other guy enough not to screw you. You could take a shot at it. It's a lot of extra money you get for basically nothing other than giving up a bracelet, other than maybe facing some criticism of the community. So I don't begrudge these guys for doing it. I don't look at them as cheaters. I'm not even saying they shouldn't have done it. I'm saying I personally wouldn't do it, but I'm not saying they shouldn't have. I'm saying the World Series should have stopped it, but I'm not saying these guys shouldn't have tried it. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say I'm rooting for these guys to not get anything or to get in trouble or I'm looking down on them. It's nothing like that. I'm not at all. And if I was, I'd say so. You know it. But at the same time, the World Series just can't let this happen. And now that it has happened, they have to handle it properly. Now let's talk again about ClubWPTGold. Is it really worth $1 million to them to do this? Don't you think maybe it would be worth it to them to save $1 million than just get a little publicity from this whole thing? Well, the answer is no. As I said, they have a very large marketing budget for whatever reason. I don't know who's funding it or what's funding it, but they have a large marketing budget. And as I said earlier in the show, they really want to market in an aggressive and confrontational fashion. They want to make their competitors feel uncomfortable. They want to bash their competitors on social media. They want to do things that make their competitors look foolish. So, of course they're happy about this. This is more than just looking generous. Here they made the World Series of Poker look incompetent. They made the bracelet look like a joke. They made a lot of players bash the World Series on social media. They corrupted a major event. And they look like the generous ones, and it looks like the World Series of Poker is cheap. Here they are adding a lot of money on top of a World Series tournament to where they're often paying more than the first place money of the event. So all these things make them look good and the World Series look bad. And they figure, hey, this is not going to make us look bad. It's not like we're giving money for people to chip dump here. We're just offering them extra money. So I'm sure they're happy about this. And to them, their name is getting brought up over and over. People are now more and more aware they exist. People keep hearing that name, ClubWPTGold. And a lot of people are going to think, hey, maybe I want to sign up for it. So this is a lot better than traditional advertising. You've heard any publicity is good publicity. Now, I don't always believe that. But in this case, any publicity where they are not seen as having done something wrong is good publicity. So believe me, given how they've been spending on marketing, they got their money's worth out of this $1 million. The first $1 million, not so much, but this $1 million, they definitely did. There's no way they would say, oh, we're taking it away, because that's the last thing they want. They don't want to get bashed. They don't want to look petty. They don't want to look cheap. They want to look like the ones who are just throwing out money, disrupting things. They don't care. They're doing funny and entertaining and disruptive things. That's what they want to look like. That's the image they want to project. And if they say, well, our terms technically say here in Rule 3, Item A5, that if there's any collusion to win at the final table when you have a golden ticket, we don't have to pay you, so we're not going to. That's not the spirit of this promotion. That's not the spirit of what they've been doing since late last year. So there's no way they're going to take this away. That's why they were announcing right away when this was over that they were congratulating Yaganuma for having his big comeback. They knew he didn't really come back, but they congratulated him just as kind of like a troll. It was a troll job. So believe me, given the tone of everything they've been doing, not only aren't they bothered by this, they're not even thinking of failing to award the $1 million. However, I'm guessing they're probably not going to officially give the money until this whole situation with the World Series is resolved. But you may ask, okay, what if the World Series decides to disqualify these two guys? Well, then what they could do next is not only award the $1 million, but I could even see where they say, okay, if you guys won't pay them, we will. We'll break out $2.25 million and we will pay them World Series because you guys are cheap pieces of shit and we want to do the right thing. So since you won't, we will. I'm not saying they will for sure, but I could see that happening. But there's no way they're going to say, well, you technically got disqualified, so we're not paying you. They're going to pay this. You will see. They are going to pay this. And I think it's highly likely the World Series will pay this. Let me take a look at the chat. If you want to text me, 775-FRAUD-55, 775-372-8355 is the number if you want to text me. This show is kind of spontaneous, so probably don't have a big listenership here at 7 in the morning Pacific time. But you never know. Some people, more than they thought, actually. So what's the overall takeaway from this? The overall takeaway is nothing against the players. They tried to get an extra $1 million and probably will get it between them, so good for them. A bracelet should not be awarded. There was no championship that was completed. They corrupted the championship and dumped chips, so we don't know who really won. ClubWPTGold is very likely thrilled about this, so they were not a victim in any way. And the World Series of Poker should have stopped this as it was occurring and definitely should stop this in the future as it happens. And there's nothing wrong with them threatening disqualification for this. Some people say, oh, this is a private deal between two people. No, it's not. It's not a private deal between two people. Because when you are playing for a bracelet, when you're playing for a title, you're expected to play all the way through to win. And as I said, if you're not, then it's not a real title. And they shouldn't award one, and they shouldn't even have one at all, if that's going to be allowed. So those are the main takeaways. I've seen people say, why are they focusing on this when they should be focusing on more important things, like that 50K event where there was alleged collusion at a full final table? And my answer is, yes, they should concentrate on that. And yes, that is more important for the World Series to look at. Harder to prove because it was one hand, but they should look at it. But that doesn't mean to the exclusion of this. This is the more interesting story, and they do need to make sure everything's okay, and they do need to make some decisions even if everything is okay. You should always avoid just jumping to a conclusion really quickly in situations like these, because there's a lot of variables here. There's a lot of variables you may not think of when you first look at it. But when you break it down to what is a bracelet? What does a bracelet really mean? Why do people want a bracelet? Why do we talk about how many bracelets people have? Why is there player of the year? If you start looking at that and then say, well, why would this be allowed then? It starts to make more sense what the right thing to do is and what the right way to look at this is. And that right way is not, well, it's between the two of them, let them do what they want. That's not the right way to look at it. The right way to look at it is also not throw the book at them, put them in jail, disqualify them, ban them, pay them nothing. No, that's not the right position either. That's too much the other way. You've got to look at things as, should these be happening? And if the answer is no, then who's at fault? What should be done about it? What's fair? What's the right response, which is neither too light nor too harsh? I think a lot of the pros are on the side of doing this because the pros have long been irritated by things like high rake and over commercialization of this, and sometimes the floor and management's flippant attitude toward players. So they like to see an underdog story where two players get together and game the system to get an extra $1 million. But you got to look past that. You got to look past whatever emotions you have about how you feel the World Series operates and how you might do it yourself, and look at what is the right response from the World Series. And often what the popular statement is on Twitter is not always the right one. Now, they're right about the chip dumping, but as far as the way to react to it, don't just go with the crowd. But as I also said, there's a certain cool factor, rebelliousness factor, that people feel like it makes them cooler and less uptight to say, oh, come on, just pay the guys. Come on, who gives a shit? Let these guys have their $1 million. This is funny. This was interesting. This was cool. Let them have it. Anyone who says otherwise is a dick. It's easy to say that and get accolades from people. It doesn't cost you anything to say that, but it just makes you look like you're supportive of the little guy and you're supportive of fighting the power. But that doesn't mean it's correct. That just means you'll get more likes on Twitter. Or it just means that you'll get less challenged by people. It might make you look like a cooler guy to say, hey, don't worry about this, but I'm not on this show to be a cool guy. I'm not on this show to say what people are going to like to hear or to repeat the common narrative. Now, sometimes I agree with the common narrative, like about Mike Postle for the most part. I agreed with it. Though there were even some areas there where I didn't agree with the main crowd. I agreed with the primary conclusions, but there were some areas where I deviated. I always try to ignore what the crowd thinks and just look at it myself and think what is right, what is wrong, and state it out here. That's what I've always done. It's pissed people off sometimes. It has soured people on this show. It has irritated people. But I don't care. I really don't care. I do this to give my opinion to the public in long form. And a lot of the listeners of this show are casual players and fans of poker. We do have some pros that listen. I've named some of them before, and I appreciate that we have some pros listening. But honestly, most of our audience consists of recreational players. It's really mostly middle-aged and older men who enjoy playing poker but don't play for a living. And they like to keep up on stories in poker, or they enjoy hearing my takes on stories they've already read about. So people listen to this to get that type of perspective, not just for me to say what the crowd is saying so I can come off as cool. I've never had an interest in that. I will say that my take about paying them an award no bracelet that has caught on somewhat. It has 150 likes on X. There's some people who disagree, but not massive disagreement. It's only a little bit of disagreement. So it does seem like that's a fairly popular position of those who have seen it. But you know what's kind of a notable absence of these 150 likes? Are name pros. And it's not that they don't follow me or anything. I mean, even some that don't, they've seen it. Because when a tweet gets enough likes and enough replies, then it starts to be shared with more people. That's the way the algorithm works. So a lot of people in poker have now seen this tweet where I said, pay the two guys but award no bracelet. A lot of pros have just not said anything. They haven't liked it. They haven't responded. But if you look at their own tweets, they're very emphatic that these guys should get fully paid. They should get the bracelet. The World Series is just ignore it and move on. So this doesn't matter is a very pro-heavy opinion. I do see some pros who have liked it. So that's good. But not as many as there should be. And it's not that I care. It's not that I'm doing this to impress the pros. I'm just telling you that I'm scrolling through these 150 likes, which only I can see because now they don't show this to the public. And there really are not that many pros that hit the like button. I'm not going to out who did because this is something that doesn't show on X anymore. And that's what people expect when they press the button. So I'm not going to out them. But for the pros that liked it, okay, thank you. But there's not that many of them. It's a bunch of names and handles I don't recognize. A few regular listeners to the show, so I appreciate that too. But a lot of people I don't recognize at all. They just kind of found the tweet and agree. But at least there's not a lot of pushback to it. It's not like everyone's bashing me or saying, no, you're stupid. There's a few people saying that, but not many. So I hope you have a better picture of all this now. So one benefit of taking a while to post this in the archives, as I have, because I've been busy with other things, is that I was able to record this postscript before posting the show with updates to the situation, because there's some major updates to it, and I don't want to make you wait until next time I do the show for you to learn about them. In fact, you may already know about them, so I might as well tell you here and give you some quick comments. This is not going to be a long postscript, but I want you to know how the story sits today, July 2nd in the morning as I'm recording this. The big news was on June 30th. This is what the World Series of Poker tweeted. The investigation into the World Series of Poker Event 53 has been completed. We have concluded that in order to uphold the integrity of the game and to uphold our official WSOP tournament rules, no winner will be recognized and no bracelet will be awarded for this year's tournament. The remaining prize pool will be split between the final two players. Very interesting idea. I wonder where you guys got it. I wonder where you guys got the idea to award the money and not the bracelet. Let's see. 4 days beforehand, a gentleman named Todd Wittelis tweeted, WSOP should facilitate deal-making. However, deal-making would not have prevented last night's debacle because it occurred due to the extra $1 million on top from a third party. Pay the players, award no bracelet, move on, allow deals, and stop play next time you see this occurring. That was my tweet from 4 days prior. So they took the part about pay the players and award no bracelet, and that is the solution they came with. And for all the people who were bitching at me for saying this, I got a number of people liking my post about it. I got a number of people agreeing with me, but I had a lot of people, especially the pros, bitching at me that this is not the right approach, that they should award the bracelet, blah, 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 blah. Well, when the WSOP announced this, you had a lot of these same people saying, oh, yeah, that's fair. Oh, yeah, that's cool. Okay, that makes sense. We're fine with it. So for the moment, it looked like there was some good news, but there's more to the story. Now, before I get to the main thing that happened that everyone's talking about, I also want to mention that ClubWPTGold awarded the $1 million to Jesse Aganuma. On July 1st, they tweeted, "A deal is a deal. Jesse Aganuma, you finished with all the chips and you had a Gold Rush ticket. You're getting the $1 million bonus. Congratulations." And then they posted a picture of him holding up the ticket. Now, this was never in doubt in my mind. I knew that they were going to award this. This was the whole point of what they were doing. This could not have worked out better for them because they got to disrupt a WSOP event, as I said earlier in the show. So they were thrilled about this. They were not mad at Jesse for doing this little game with James and winning through this chip dump. They were not bothered by that at all. They would much rather it happen this way than the other way, where Jesse finishes second and they don't pay him the $1 million, but then they don't get all the publicity from this and they don't make the WSOP look stupid. So they're very, very happy with the way this turned out. So, of course, they paid the $1 million. That was not a surprise at all. What is a surprise, and this is not verified yet, but keep in mind that I think it's true. From everything I can see, from everything I'm hearing, I think it's true, but I'm not sure it's true. The big news is that Jesse Aganuma and James Carroll have been permanently banned from all Caesars properties. I didn't expect that. Some people were talking about maybe that'll happen. I didn't expect that. In fact, I didn't even expect they'd be banned for the remainder of the World Series of 2025. I really thought that they're going to get paid, that the bracelet's not going to be awarded, and they're going to come up with some kind of clearer language to prevent this in the future and watch more closely and put a stop to it if it occurs. That was really what I thought was going to happen. And while that probably is what's going to happen, the ban I didn't see coming. By the way, if you take a look on the Hendon Mob, you'll see that both of these guys are shown finishing second. They actually are tied for second. This is the only World Series event in history where there is a tie for second and no first place finisher. There is no other event that's ever been listed that way, and there is no other event where a bracelet was not awarded. So this is making history right here in 2025 that a World Series of Poker summer bracelet event took place, and it did not end up awarding a bracelet, and the two highest finishers were both second place with identical prize money. And that's exactly what they were paid, by the way. Of course, they probably did whatever they were going to do as far as splitting the money and splitting the $1 million and all that, but that's all behind the scenes. But as far as what they were officially awarded, it was what was between first and second place money. So WSOP didn't confiscate any money. Collectively, these two guys got paid in full, and Aganuma got the $1 million from WPT, but it appears they were both banned. Now, I say it appears because there is no confirmation. WSOP said nothing about this, and of course they're not going to because there's privacy matters involved. If they were to state that they banned these guys, there could be some problems. So they're really not supposed to discuss the matters of customers who are banned, so they're not going to. They're not going to say it. Nevada Gaming's not going to say it. Really, the only ones who might say it would be the guys themselves, but the problem is neither of them is active on social media. These are not active X posters or active Facebook posters to my knowledge. So that's the problem here, is that we're not going to hear from them, possibly. I don't know forever if we won't hear from them, but we are not hearing from them right now. So we don't know for sure. But they're definitely not coming out and saying, no, it's cool, I'm not banned. Like, they're not putting out the message. And these are not anonymous people. They do have friends. And one guy claiming he was a friend of Carol's said that he definitely is banned. But we still don't have full confirmation, and that supposed friend, nobody really knows him. So for all we know, the guy could be making this up. But I don't think he is. I think it's legit. And I think that both these guys really did get banned from all Caesars properties. And then you might ask, wait a minute, why would that happen? Why would they both get banned? And why does Caesars even care? They don't own the World Series anymore. So even if the WSOP looks foolish, why is Caesars bothered by that since it's not theirs now? And if it was GG Poker banning them from the World Series, then why are they banned from all Caesars properties? So it didn't make a lot of sense to me at first. I would think that maybe GG Poker could ban these guys, but then they wouldn't be banned from Caesars properties just from the World Series itself. Or Caesars could ban these guys, but they wouldn't be banned from the World Series. Like, how are they banned from the whole thing? And why would Caesars do this if they don't own the World Series anymore? Didn't make sense to me. Well, upon thinking about it further, I came to realize that it's very possible that this did have to do with Nevada Gaming. Now, I'm not saying Nevada Gaming necessarily said they had to be banned, but I think that maybe Nevada Gaming got involved in this matter and started looking around, and Caesars, out of an abundance of caution, banned these guys and basically told gaming, hey, look, as soon as we figured it out, we banned them from our properties. They won't be playing here anymore, and we're done. We've done what we needed to do. Because if any form of cheating occurs at a licensed Nevada casino, they're not going to necessarily get in trouble provided they handle the matter correctly. So they may be afraid that this could be a ding against their license, or they could get fined if they just look the other way about this one. And I know a lot of the poker players want them to look the other way, but that's not realistic because Caesars can get in trouble with Nevada Gaming for not taking any action here, even though in a way it's kind of victimless. It is still against the tournament rules. It is still chip dumping. It is still a form of collusion. So they may have gotten scared that if they did nothing, this could have been a big problem for them. So they'd much rather just get rid of the two guys, not say a word about it. And they figure, the World Series is so popular, it's not like people are going to leave. It's not like people are going to quit playing. So yeah, there'll be anger on social media, and that's going to be that. So it does appear that Jesse Yaganuma and James Carroll are banned, not just from the World Series, but from all Caesars properties. And it might be permanent. Now, of course, they can lift it at any point. But there's been other bans where people have been banned for years for relatively minor things, especially things you wouldn't expect the ban to last for years and years. Like, we had one of them on the show several years ago, Luke Vrabel, a.k.a. Slay Dog. He was banned basically for just talking a lot of shit about a floor man that he had a problem with when he was at a final table. And they just said, okay, well, we're tired of this shit. We're banning you. That's not what they said word for word. They didn't use that sort of language, but that's why they banned him. And he was banned for 5 years from all Caesars properties. And finally, he got it undone. And finally, he actually got an apology from Jack Effel, the tournament director, over the whole matter. And, he was right. He was right in that situation. He should not have been banned. And in fact, he was getting screwed in that situation at the final table. I'm not going to go tell that story again, but I'm just saying that that was the type of ban that should not have happened. And then Sam Panzica is currently banned from the World Series of Poker and has been for quite some time because he got drunk. He was watching a final table. He made some joke about a gun, and they took it as a threat, and he's banned. And it was very clear from the context of what happened that he was not making a threat. So I would understand if they banned him for a short time while they investigated, but to leave him banned for years and years and years because of one comment about a gun is pretty crazy to me. And, he's not a friend of mine or anything. I don't even know him. I know of him, but it's not someone I'm looking to defend or take up for. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why he has this length of a ban, and they just won't talk about it. Just like they would not talk about Luke Vrabel's ban until finally Nick Palma, of all people, just talked to Jack Effel at one of the World Series and convinced him to let Luke back in. And that's how he got back in. So these two guys, I could see being banned for a very long time because this caused a lot of embarrassment to the World Series of Poker, and it may have scared Caesars about their license. And that's a lot worse than Luke talking trash about a floor man or Sam Panzica getting drunk and making a joke about a gun. This is worse. So these guys, who knows when we'll see them at the World Series again. So I just wanted to put out those notes for you about the whole thing. The matter has pretty much been closed. The World Series has not made further comment about what they're going to do about this in the future, but I think this is going to scare a lot of people going forward because they know they'll probably get a ban from all Caesars properties, which they probably don't want. So I think that will create a disincentive for this, even if they're not announcing it. And furthermore, ClubWPTGold is not backing down at all. ClubWPTGold is pushing ahead, and in fact, they've added more events that you can win the gold tickets for because they want to see a repeat of this. So they're really being aggressive about this. And there are some rumors that ClubWPTGold might suffer some consequences for this, or at least the WSOP might attempt some consequences, such as pushing to make these sweepstakes type sites illegal in Nevada and use their influence there to do it, and then that'll push them out of the market. I could easily see Caesars and the WSOP getting together to do this to get back at ClubWPTGold for what they did here. Finally, I do want to point out that there's a possible motive to this whole thing besides just publicity for ClubWPTGold. Now, of course, we know that WPT and WSOP have been longtime rivals. That's nothing new. That goes back more than 2 decades. But what you may not really think about, but is definitely worth considering, is that the WSOP did something kind of crappy to the WPT not too long ago. And that was the WSOP created their Bahamas Atlantis tournament to basically replace the PokerStars PCA, but they put it in December instead of January where PokerStars tournament used to be. And they put it right there in December to disrupt the WPT Win series that was gaining in popularity. And it looked like WSOP was worried that that series was going to become almost like a second WSOP, but this time on the WPT side, and they didn't want that. They wanted to have the dominant series, and they did not want WPT getting a piece of that action in the winter. So they quickly created WSOP Atlantis and put it at the same time as that Win series, and it was very intentional. So WPT might have been pissed about this, and this may have been a little swipe back at WSOP for doing that. I'm just guessing here. This is nothing I've heard. This is nothing I've been told. I'm just guessing that this might be a little revenge for that. But then some revenge might be coming the other way soon to ClubWPTGold if those sweepstakes sites become illegal in Nevada, and if some people at Caesars who have the influence to make that sort of thing happen, if they now push harder to make that occur. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward with all of this. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. And finally, before I turn this off, I know a lot of you have heard about the new gambling tax law that is written into the One Big Beautiful Bill that Trump is trying to get passed. And a lot of people are freaking out about it. There's a lot of hyperbole on Twitter of people saying that this is going to end professional gambling as we know it. Now, I'm not going to go into a discussion about that right now, but I will tell you, just to calm you down if you're worried about it, this is not going to end professional gambling as we know it. This is not going to have a tremendous effect. This is nowhere near as much of a problem or as big of news as people are making it out to be. So there's a lot of people, a lot of pros running on Twitter right now saying the sky's falling because of this. First of all, the bill hasn't fully passed it. It hasn't gotten past the House, but even if it does, and there's a good chance it will, even if it does, and even if the House doesn't amend it and take this out, which is a good chance this will actually become law, don't panic. There's a lot of reasons why this is not going to make a tremendous impact, and don't believe everything you read. So I will try to put out maybe a little special about this and explain it so people can understand and people can maybe be a little bit less stressed about it. So this is not like another Black Friday or anything else that you're going to remember as a terrible date that killed professional gambling. It's not like that. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that it's not nearly as bad as people are portraying. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Republican. Because if this were something that was huge, that was going to be hurting the gambling community, hurting the poker community, then I would be honest about it, even if it came from my side of the aisle, and I have before when I haven't agreed with things that the right has done or that Republican presidents have done. So I would not be afraid to say that. And again, I'm not saying I agree with this, I don't like it, but I'm also saying that this is nowhere near as big as being portrayed, and people are being very dramatic, and a lot of people just don't really understand it very well. They don't understand the law, they don't understand the way it's actually going to affect them. They don't think of various legal ways that gamblers can utilize to not have it be as impactful. They're just not thinking of these things. So I'm going to break it all down at some point, just not on this show. Just wanted to put that out there because I know some of you are curious about that, and that just broke yesterday. All right, so we're going to go back to our little closing that I actually recorded back on June 27th, and I'll talk to you guys a little bit later. Just before this occurred, and just before the allegations were coming out about that PLO event, which we still haven't talked about, I was saying, wow, this is a quiet World Series. We had the Suck Me